Chapter 1905. Beichun thought for a moment and said, "I'll go back to the palace first and wait for you there. We'll come back together at night." The main reason why Palace Master Yu allowed them to come to this sky stairway to cultivate was because of Bailey Hongzhuang. Now that Bailey Hongzhuang had gone to Wine Canyon to cultivate, it wasn't appropriate for him to continue staying here. Hearing this, Bailey Hongzhuang also understood Beichun's concerns and immediately nodded. "Then bring me to cultivate in Wind Canyon, and I'll go look for you after I return." Bailey Hongzhuang smiled sweetly. Her already outstanding face was now even more dazzling, making people unable to take their eyes off her. Bailey Hongzhuang and Beichun left the palace together. After following the two for a while, they separated. Bailey Hongzhuang went to Wine Canyon, while Beichun went to the palace. On this day, when Bailey Hongzhuang came to Wine Canyon again, the way the core disciples of Limitless Palace looked at Bailey Hongzhuang was completely different from yesterday. When Pei Yifan saw Bailey Hongzhuang, he couldn't help but reveal a smile. Seeing this, Bailey Hongzhuang also smiled slightly, expressing her goodwill. The three beasties followed closely behind Bailey Hongzhuang, their gazes constantly sizing up the crowd. They were really curious. Who exactly was that chewing Fei? This person actually dared to treat their master like that yesterday. She was really reckless. One must know that before Beichun left this morning, he had already informed them that if they saw someone who bullied their master, they definitely didn't need to be polite. Therefore, they came here today to solemnly look for trouble. Bailey Hongzhuang looked at the three beasties who kept looking around. The smile in her eyes deepened. She had been with the three beasties for such a long time, so she naturally understood their personalities very well. Just by looking at how they had solemnly vowed to come to Wind Canyon to cultivate yesterday, she had already guessed the thoughts of the three beasts. However, if she guessed correctly, Chewing Fei would not come here to cultivate for the time being. While Bailey Hongzhuang and the three beasties were having their own thoughts, the core disciples of Limitless Palace had their eyes fixed on the three beasties. Their eyes were filled with deep shock. These three contracted beasts look very intelligent. Could they be Bailey Hongzhuang's contracted beasts? I think one of them should be Bailey Hongzhuang's contracted beast, but I don't know which one it is. Then why are the other two demonic beasts here? Everyone was puzzled. Contracted beasts were very hard to come by. Even if they were the core disciples of Limitless Palace, they couldn't find a suitable contracted beast in a short period of time. With their current status, it could be seen that they had boundless potential on the path of cultivation. If the contracted beast's level wasn't high, not only would it not be of any help to them in the future, it might even drag them down. Therefore, they were very careful when choosing their contracted beasts. However, there were also cultivators who had contracted beasts among them. Everyone had always been very envious of cultivators who had contracted beasts, but it was too difficult to find a suitable contracted beast. Now that they saw that Bailey Hongzhuang already had her own contracted beast, they were also envious in their hearts. Chapter 1906. It seems that Tiangang's sect's treatment of cultivators is very good. Bailey Hongzhuang is just a new disciple, and she already has her own contract beast. Even if she is the champion of the assessment competition, this treatment is already very good. Everyone sighed. Such treatment was really enviable. No one thought that this was Bailey Hongzhuang's contract beast. In fact, after they found out about Bailey Hongzhuang's identity yesterday, they went back and specifically inquired about the champion of the assessment competition. According to their understanding, Bailey Hongzhuang only came from an ordinary small dynasty and would not have such a background. However, in the process of understanding, they also found out about Bailey Hongzhuang's other identity. It was said that Bailey Hongzhuang was the sweetheart of Tiangang's sect's young sect master. They had only heard a little about this news, but were not very clear about it. However, according to the other disciples, they had seen Tiangang's sect's young sect master, Beichun, come to Wuji Palace with a very outstanding-looking woman in white. After knowing this, they were more and more certain that this woman was Bailey Hongzhuang. At this moment, they had already understood why the palace master would specially bring Bailey Hongzhuang to Wine Canyon to cultivate. It was because of the relationship between Bailey Hongzhuang and Tiangang Sect's young sect master. Therefore, when they saw Bailey Hongzhuang again today, their attitude became much more polite. If Tiangang Sect's young sect master really liked Bailey Hongzhuang, then Bailey Hongzhuang would be the mistress of Tiangang Sect in the future. They could not afford to offend such an identity. Bailey Hongzhuang is the sweetheart of Tiangang Sect's young sect master, so it's normal for her to have such a reward. Why should we be envious? A woman sighed. With such an identity, they could not be envious at all. Tiangang Sect's young sect master had always been famous and was the dream lover of countless women. Many women hoped that they could become the sweetheart of Tiangang Sect's young lord. However, a dream was a dream after all. It was impossible to realize. However, because the young sect master of Tiangang Sect had never confirmed his sweetheart over the years, everyone still had some fantasies in their hearts. Previously, everyone thought that Han Xiling and Di Beichun were a match made in heaven, but this news was later denied by everyone. This news had once made many female cultivators jump for joy, but now, with the appearance of Bailey Hongzhuang, their fantasies were completely shattered. Hearing the woman's words, everyone nodded in agreement. Although there was some bitterness in his heart, he had to admit that what she said was the truth. Although they had only met Bailey Hongzhuang yesterday, Bailey Hongzhuang had already proven her strength through her performance. Not only that, they could also determine that Bailey Hongzhuang was extremely talented. In contrast, in the face of such a Bailey Hongzhuang, they were also somewhat ashamed. In terms of appearance, strength, and potential, Bailey Hongzhuang was better than them. Di Beichun, liking Bailey Hongzhuang, was also very normal. Although Bailey Hongzhuang's identity was not outstanding, Bailey Hongzhuang's potential was huge. Chapter 1907. When Bailey Hongzhuang heard everyone's discussion, she knew that everyone already knew about her relationship with Di Beichun. Speaking of which, Di Beichun was too high profile when he brought her back from the assessment competition. Yesterday, when the core disciples of Limitless Palace found out about her identity, they must have gone back and asked around. She believed that as long as they asked around, they would know the reason behind it. Regarding this point, Bailey Hongzhuang never planned to hide it. In fact, Di Beichun accompanied her to Limitless Palace. This was witnessed by many cultivators. Since Bailey Hongzhuang has her own contracted beast, why are there 3 contracted beasts here? Everyone was puzzled. Why did the other 2 demonic beasts come here? Almost everyone's gaze was fixed on the 3 demonic beasts. From the intelligent eyes of the 3 demonic beasts, they could tell that these 3 demonic beasts' ranks were not low. For a moment, many cultivators had some thoughts in their minds. Since Bailey Hongzhuang could only have 1 contracted beast, the remaining 2 demonic beasts were ownerless. If their ranks were high enough and they were suitable for them, they might be able to get the contract beasts at a high price after getting closer to Bailey Hongzhuang. The white tiger-like demonic beast was obviously not small and was not suitable for them. However, the black and white demonic beasts that looked exactly the same were small and exquisite. They must still be very young. The 3 demonic beasts were already used to other cultivators sizing them up. Whenever they went out with their master, it was inevitable that there would be many cultivators eyeing them. However, these people did not even look at their own abilities. Other than their master, they did not fancy anyone else. These people must be thinking of buying us to be their contracted beasts. They must be dreaming. Xiao Hei's eyes were filled with ridicule. Other than their master, no one else was qualified to be their master. However, it was obvious that these people did not realize this point. Back when they went to the Snow Origin country, there were people who tried to buy them by force. However, they all ended up in a miserable state. That's right. They should take a look at their own capabilities. Xiao Bai's eyes were filled with disdain and mockery. Speaking of which, it and Xiao Hei were famous demonic beasts. Who knew that these people didn't even know what kind of demonic beasts they were? They always thought that it was easy to buy them. It was simply an insult to them. In comparison, Bai Shi's mood was much better. It had also overheard the conversations of the other cultivators. Most of the cultivators believed that it was its master's contracted beast, while Xiao Hei and Xiao Bai were not. After all, its body had grown bigger and bigger. It didn't look like a young demonic beast at all, but a demonic beast that had grown up by its master's side. As its body gradually grew, it discovered that its strength was also constantly increasing. The quality of its entire body was constantly improving. It felt that as long as it continued to develop like this, it would become extremely powerful in the future. Xiao He and Xiao Bai were speechless when they saw how excited Bai Shi was. Chapter 1908. Noticing Xiao He and Xiao Bai's gazes, Bai Shi shook its head. It still looked very proud. Xiao He and Xiao Bai had a habit of acting cute. They were used to appearing in front of others in their smallest forms. One must know that Xiao He and Xiao Bai were extraordinarily big when they were in the desert world. Now that it had grown up, its master could no longer carry it while walking. Xiao He and Xiao Bai could still sit on its master's shoulders. In comparison, Bai Shi felt very unbalanced. However, it seemed that there were still some benefits. After seeing Bailey Hongzhuang's contracted beast, Pei Yifun's eyes were filled with doubt. When he found out about Bailey Hongzhuang's identity, his heart was filled with surprise. However, after thinking about it carefully, he felt that it was not strange for someone as outstanding as Bailey Hongzhuang to have such an identity. Perhaps such an identity was the most suitable one. Pei Yifun's heart was also filled with yearning for a contracted beast. However, he also knew that it was too difficult to find one suitable for him. Even in the entire Wuji Palace, there were not many cultivators who had contracted beasts. Pei Yifun slowly walked in front of Bailey Hongzhuang with a warm smile on his handsome face. "Miss Bailey, is this your contracted beast?" Pei Yifun asked. He did not have any ideas about Xiao He and Xiao Bai. He had always been curious about cultivators who had contracted beasts. In his heart, he had never given up on having his own contracted beast. Therefore, when he saw other cultivators with contracted beasts, he could not help but want to know more about them. In this way, when he had the chance in the future, he would be able to find a more suitable contracted beast. Bailey Hongzhuang saw the curiosity and envy in Pei Yifun's eyes at a glance. However, Pei Yifun did not reveal any covetous expression. Just like Pei Yifun's upright personality, it could be seen at any time. Bailey Hongzhuang nodded slightly and smiled. "That's right. They're my contracted beasts." Hearing Bailey Hongzhuang's answer, Pei Yifun was not surprised. He only looked at the three beasts and asked, "May I know which one is your contracted beast?" However, the three beasts' gazes fell on Pei Yifun. They had mixed feelings about this person who suddenly appeared and asked them a question. However, seeing Pei Yifun's expression, they guessed that he had a good relationship with their master, so they did not show any hostility. "They are all my contracted beasts," Bailey Hongzhuang slowly said. She did not tell others that she had 3 contracted beasts because she was too weak at that time. If others knew this news of her, they would inevitably be careless. There was no need to continue hiding it. There was no longer any need to continue hiding it. Hearing Bailey Hongzhuang's words, Pei Yifun's eyes were filled with astonishment. He looked at Bailey Hongzhuang in shock, wondering if he had heard wrongly. She had contracted 3 beasts? This was simply impossible. However, looking at Bailey Hongzhuang's calm expression, it did not seem like she was joking. Chapter 1909. When they heard Bailey Hongzhuang say that these 3 beasts were her contracted beasts, everyone thought that Bailey Hongzhuang was joking, because that was simply impossible. Every cultivator in the Shengxian continent knew that a cultivator could only contract 1 beast. It was impossible for them to have 2 or more contracted beasts. For a moment, everyone's gaze fell on Pei Yifun. They only hoped that Pei Yifun would continue to ask so that they could be more certain of the answer. "Miss Bailey, are these 3 your contracted beasts?" Pei Yifun's eyes flickered with uncertainty. He had never heard of such a thing before. Facing Pei Yifun's doubtful gaze, Bailey Hongzhuang was very calm. In fact, she had experienced such things many times before. Whenever someone heard that she had 3 contracted beasts, they would feel that it was inconceivable. Therefore, they would often have to ask many times before they could be certain. "That's right, they are all my contracted beasts." Bailey Hongzhuang spoke again. Even after receiving Bailey Hongzhuang's answer, Pei Yifun's shock did not diminish. This was because he simply could not understand how Bailey Hongzhuang was able to do this. This had really overturned his understanding. Facing Pei Yifun's doubts, Bailey Hongzhuang did not intend to explain. Other than Di Beichun, she had not explained this to anyone else. After seeing Bailey Hongzhuang's expression, Pei Yifun naturally knew that Bailey Hongzhuang would not explain. This kind of thing was often a cultivator's secret. Bailey Hongzhuang must have some special means to be able to have this kind of special ability. If he continued to ask, it would be his fault. After hearing Bailey Hongzhuang's answer, the other cultivators' expressions changed again and again. This answer was simply too difficult to accept. When the three beasts noticed the change in everyone's expressions, they could not help but smile slyly. In the next moment, Bai Shi appeared beside Bailey Hongzhuang. Xiao He and Xiao Bai directly jumped onto Bailey Hongzhuang's shoulders. Their intimate behavior clearly showed that they were Bailey Hongzhuang's contracted beasts. After witnessing this scene, Pei Yifun no longer had any doubts about Lu Xian's identity. There is always a certain distance between a demonic beast and a cultivator. Other than contracted beasts who were very close to their masters, other demonic beasts would not be so close to a cultivator. The three contracted beasts had used their actions to prove their relationship with Bailey Hongzhuang. The cultivators who originally still had some thoughts about Xiao He and Xiao Bai completely gave up after seeing this scene. Heavens, Bailey Hongzhuang has three contracted beasts. How? I just don't understand. How'd she do it? Yeah, I've never heard of this before. It's really too shocking. Everyone was confused. They simply could not understand how Bailey Hongzhuang did it. However, since Bailey Hongzhuang was unwilling to say, they could not ask. They could only silently guess in their hearts, but could not get an answer. Chapter 19:10. Everyone only felt that Bailey Hongzhuang's body was filled with a lot of secrets, which made people unable to understand. Compared to the contempt when they first met Bailey Hongzhuang, it was a completely different feeling now. Thinking about how Chu Yingfei had thoroughly offended Bailey Hongzhuang yesterday, everyone felt that it was a little funny. Chu Yingfei was really digging her own grave now. According to the information they received, the young sect master of Tiangang sect doted on Bailey Hongzhuang very much. If the young sect master of Tiangang sect knew about what happened yesterday, Chu Yingfei would definitely not have a good ending. Speaking of which, why didn't I see Chu Yingfei come today? Could it be that she already knows Bailey Hongzhuang's true identity? A cultivator voiced his doubts. After knowing Bailey Hongzhuang's true identity yesterday, he was very curious. What kind of expression would Chu Yingfei show when she saw Bailey Hongzhuang today? It was just that today was already past the gathering time, but Chu Yingfei had never appeared. Could it be that she didn't have the courage to come? Hearing the words of this cultivator, everyone couldn't help but look behind, their expressions revealing a bit of curiosity and ridicule. If Chu Yingfei really didn't come today, it would be really funny. It's right that Chu Yingfei didn't come. If she came, I'm afraid her fate would be even worse. Now everyone already knew that Bailey Hongzhuang was definitely not a person to be trifled with. In comparison, what Bailey Hongzhuang did to Chu Yingfei yesterday was already considered a lighter punishment. That's true, but you can't hide forever. Everyone snickered. Originally, Bailey Hongzhuang had already let Chu Yingfei go yesterday. But Chu Yingfei wanted to court death and kept harassing Bailey Hongzhuang. At this moment, Chu Yingfei must have regretted it to the extreme. In everyone's opinion, Bailey Hongzhuang's temper was already very good. If it was anyone else, as long as they had the ability, Chu Yingfei would probably not be able to escape death. Just as everyone was secretly mocking Chu Yingfei had already fallen into a state of collapse. Ever since she suffered such intense pain yesterday, she felt that her entire body had no strength. Thus, Chu Yingfei directly began to rest. When she woke up this morning, she prepared to head to Wine Canyon to cultivate. However, when she woke up, she felt that something was wrong with her. After a careful examination, she suddenly realized that her strength had changed from Green Realm Level 5 to Green Realm Level 1. After discovering this point, Chu Yingfei only felt that she must be dreaming. This was something that simply couldn't happen. It was impossible for his strength to mysteriously regress. However, what happened next caused Chu Yingfei to completely collapse. This was because no matter how she tried, she realized that the elemental energy in her body remained at Green Realm Level 1. It was as if her cultivation had suddenly deteriorated overnight, but she couldn't find the problem at all. What happened last night? Chu Yingfei was confused. Her pretty face was filled with nervousness and worry. As a core disciple of Limitless Palace, strength was the most important thing. Originally, after losing 3 months of cultivation resources, her mood was already very bad. But now that her strength had suddenly regressed so much, she would completely lose the qualifications to become a core disciple. Under such circumstances, she had no way to face the others. Chapter 19:11. Chu Yingfei sat on the bed with a pale face. Her expression was stupefied and panicked. It was as if an unknown fear filled her heart. This is impossible. I only slept last night and didn't do anything. How come my strength suddenly drop so much? Chu Yingfei shook her head. This was absolutely impossible. There must be a reason. She simply couldn't bear the consequences of her strength falling. She had to recover her strength as soon as possible. It wasn't easy for her to obtain her current status and strength. If she lost the title of core disciple just like that, who knows how many cultivators she would offend with her previous arrogant personality. Once she became an ordinary disciple again, she was afraid that people who wanted to cause trouble for her would come knocking on her door one after another. Chu Yingfei forced herself to calm down. After thinking for a long time, she couldn't help but think of Bailey Hongzhuang. Yesterday, Bailey Hongzhuang suddenly made her fall into a sharp pain. When she woke up again, she didn't notice the change in her strength. Now that she thought about it, there was no other possibility other than Bailey Hongzhuang doing something. Bailey Hongzhuang. Chu Yingfei gritted her teeth. Every word was squeezed out from the gaps of her teeth. Her dark and deep eyes were filled with resentment. Her expression was ferocious to the extreme. She looked as if she couldn't wait to kill Bailey Hongzhuang right now. This woman really deserves to die. If I wasn't a bit slower yesterday, she would already be dead. Chu Yingfei's heart was filled with regret. It was because he took a wrong step that the current situation became like this. After confirming Bailey Hongzhuang, Chu Yingfei decided to find Bailey Hongzhuang and force Bailey Hongzhuang to hand over the antidote. Now Bailey Hongzhuang was her only chance. If Bailey Hongzhuang didn't give her the antidote, then she really could only die. She believed that if she told this matter to Elder Su, Bailey Hongzhuang would become an evil person who persecuted cultivators. Furthermore, Bailey Hongzhuang was not a cultivator of Limitless Palace. If she dared to do such a thing to him, the sect would definitely not let her off. One had to know that core disciples were the most important resource for every sect. In the next moment, Chu Yingfei immediately got up and walked out of the house, heading towards the Wind Canyon. She wanted to question Bailey Hongzhuang in front of everyone. When Bailey Hongzhuang was embarrassed, she would obediently hand over the antidote to her. The three beasts kept looking around, but after looking for a long time, they didn't see Chu Yingfei's figure, so they could only give up their initial plan. That guy is lucky that he didn't come today. Otherwise, I would definitely teach him a lesson. Xiao Hei pursed her lips. She originally wanted to teach Chu Yingfei a lesson today, but she didn't expect Chu Yingfei to not come. It was really disappointing. I don't believe that she'll hide forever. Anyway, we've been cultivating with Master these days. We'll see her sooner or later. Xiaobai was quite calm. It believed that since Chu Yingfei was a core disciple of Limitless Palace, she would definitely come to cultivate. After all, Limitless Palace had such a good cultivation environment. If she still didn't come, the elders would definitely blame her. Hearing Xiao Bai's words, Xiao Hei and Bai nodded. What said was very reasonable. At most, they would wait here and see who could outlast the other. Chapter 19:12. Thinking about it. When Chu Yingfei woke up this morning, she realized that her elemental energy had regressed. Chu Yingfei was probably still in shock and panic. However, she believed that Chu Yingfei would come to find her soon. After all, It was easy to think that she was the one who did it. However, she would come a little later. No matter what Chewing Fei thought, she would not hand over the antidote. With Chewing Fei's disgusting personality, she should be punished. She believed that in a few days, Chewing Fei would disappear from the group of core disciples. Since she had already come to Wuji Palace to cultivate, although she did not want to take the initiative to cause trouble, she would not be polite when someone came to find trouble with her. Killing the chicken to warn the monkey often had a good effect. Master, how do we cultivate in Wind Canyon? Baishir looked at the Wind Canyon in front of him. It saw that many cultivators had already walked in, but it felt that there was nothing special about this Wind Canyon. Xiao He and Xiao Bai's gazes also fell on the Wind Canyon. They curiously looked at the Wind Canyon. Yesterday, when they heard their master talk about the Wind Canyon, they were very curious. However, at a glance, this Wind Canyon was just an ordinary canyon. It was hard to believe that it had such a special effect. Go in and take a look. You will know if what I said is true or not. Bailey Hongzhuang smiled. When she saw this Wind Canyon for the first time yesterday, she also had the same doubts. However, after seeing it for herself, she understood the magic of this place. Hearing Bailey Hongzhuang's words, the three beasties nodded and followed closely behind Bailey Hongzhuang into the Wind Canyon. Bailey Hongzhuang continued to try to prevent the elemental energy in her body from dissipating quickly. Her walking speed was not fast, and the three beasties also followed behind her to feel the effects of this strange hurricane. This hurricane is too magical. The elemental energy in my body is dissipating quickly. Xiao He could not hide the shock in her eyes. When she heard her master talk about it yesterday, she felt that it was very magical. Seeing it with her own eyes today, she finally understood how powerful this hurricane was. It had seen many mystical things, but it had never seen a hurricane that could remove origin power. It's too difficult to stay here for 4 hours. Xiao Bai's eyes rippled with emotion. Its current strength wasn't considered weak, but in this Wind Canyon, its origin energy dissipated extremely quickly. It simply couldn't hold on for that long. Not to mention 4 hours. Even half an hour would be difficult to persevere. Bailey Hongzhuang nodded when she heard Beastie's sigh. It's indeed not easy to stay here for 4 hours. However, we can only continue to work hard now. Since the requirement is to stay for 4 hours, it means that there must be a way to do it. It's just that we haven't reached that step yet. Bailey Hongzhuang's expression was indifferent. When she heard Elder Su mention this assessment requirement, she knew that someone must have completed it. That was why there was such a requirement. Hence, she was neither anxious nor impatient. During this process, she slowly looked for a way to raise her strength. After the three beasties saw Bailey Hongzhuang's firm and confident appearance, their eyes were also filled with a touch of firmness. Chapter 19:13. Bailey Hongzhuang and the three beasties were focused on training in the Wind Canyon. The other disciples of Limitless Palace were also walking in the Wind Canyon. They had been training in the Wind Canyon for a longer period of time, so they had some experience. The time they could stay in the Wind Canyon was much longer than Bailey Hongzhuang. Any cultivator with decent strength would have their own secret. This was the foundation of their existence, so they would not casually tell this to other cultivators. After all, everyone was in a competitive relationship. The more outstanding one's performance was, the greater the pressure on the others. Bailey Hongzhuang naturally knew what everyone was thinking, so she did not ask anyone and only relied on herself to explore. Bailey Hongzhuang told her thoughts to the three beasties. After the three beasties heard it, they understood and immediately followed Bailey Hongzhuang's method to train. Almost all the cultivators were in the same state. After the elemental energy in their body had dissipated, they walked out of the Wind Canyon to meditate and train. After their elemental energy had recovered, they walked back into the Wind Canyon to train. Bailey Hongzhuang's training method was the same as yesterday. After her elemental energy was exhausted, she used elixirs to recover. The three beasties chose to meditate to train. Compared to their master, who was anxious to increase her strength, they were not that anxious. After all, elixirs were also very important training resources. It was normal for their master to use them, but if they were to use them together, it would be too wasteful. These elixirs were all refined by their master. If they were to use all the elixirs, then their master would have to spend a lot of time refining elixirs. It was undoubtedly a waste of their master's time. Bailey Hongzhuang naturally knew what the three beasties were thinking. Her heart was moved. When the other cultivators saw that the three contracted beasts were also cultivating with Bai Shui and Hongzhuang in the Wind Canyon, the amazement in their eyes became even more intense. There had always been a certain level of communication between a contract beast and its master. It was not something that outsiders could understand. However, the higher the level of spirituality it received, the higher its level. These three contracted beasts are too smart, aren't they? They actually know how to cultivate in the Wind Canyon while meditating here. I've seen many contracted beasts, but I've never seen contracted beasts with such intelligence. Yeah, I've never seen it either. If I hadn't seen it with my own eyes today, I wouldn't have believed it at all. I wonder what species these three contracted beasts are. I've never seen them before. I've observed them for a long time, but I've never heard of the existence of such beasts. Everyone looked at each other in dismay. They had never seen such a demonic beast before, so they couldn't understand. Logically speaking, they should know a lot about demonic beasts. After all, as a cultivator, it was necessary for them to understand demonic beasts. Moreover, they had always wanted to have a contract beast, so naturally, they would have a better understanding of some of the higher-level contract beasts. However, they really couldn't understand these three beasts. Logically speaking, with Bailey Hongzhuang's status, her contracted beast levels shouldn't be low. It was fine if one person didn't know, but when all of them didn't know, it was a little strange. Chapter 1914. Bailey Hongzhuang. A sharp and furious voice that was mixed with a roar immediately attracted everyone's attention. After Bailey Hongzhuang heard this voice, her eyebrows raised slightly, but her expression was indifferent and wanton. Who else could it be other than Chu Yingfei, who came to find her at such a time and was so angry? After everyone heard Chu Yingfei's roar, their eyes were filled with surprise. Yesterday, when they found out about Bailey Hongzhuang's identity, they felt that Chu Yingfei must be regretting her past actions. They only hoped that they had never offended Bailey Hongzhuang. Presumably, when they saw Bailey Hongzhuang again today, she would definitely think of ways to make up for her mistakes yesterday. However, what they did not expect was that at this time, Chu Yingfei actually dared to roar at Bailey Hongzhuang. Wasn't this courting death? At this moment, everyone could not understand what was going on with Chu Yingfei. Bailey Hongzhuang, what did you do to me yesterday? Chu Yingfei stood in front of Bailey Hongzhuang. Her pitch-black eyes were mixed with flames of anger, as if she wanted to burn Bailey Hongzhuang to ashes. Bailey Hongzhuang looked at Chu Yingfei indifferently and said, "Don't you know very well what I did? Now you're asking me?" Seeing Bailey Hongzhuang's disapproving look, Chu Yingfei became even angrier. If Bailey Hongzhuang didn't admit it, it would be fine, but it was this look of helplessness that made people even angrier. Is Chu Yingfei's brain damaged? Or does she really not want to stay here anymore? Even today, she still treats Bailey Hongzhuang with such an attitude? A cultivator murmured, his voice filled with disbelief and incredulity. Logically speaking, with Bailey Hongzhuang's identity, everyone couldn't wait to curry favor with her. Chu Yingfei was still rushing to find trouble. Wasn't she just looking for trouble? Who knows what Chu Yingfei is thinking? Maybe she doesn't want to stay here. There's really a good show to watch now. Bailey Hongzhuang was lucky to let her go yesterday. I didn't expect Chu Yingfei to come looking for trouble now. No one can save her. Everyone stopped beside Bailey Hongzhuang and Chu Yingfei. They were really curious about how this matter would develop. When all the cultivators were sighing at Chu Yingfei's recklessness, in fact, Chu Yingfei had been resting since she went back yesterday. She didn't ask about Bailey Hongzhuang at all, so she didn't know the news that everyone knew. Bailey Hongzhuang, the reason why I've become like this, is it because of your secret tricks? Chu Yingfei questioned Bailey Hongzhuang. Although it was a question, her tone was firm. In her opinion, other than Bailey Hongzhuang, no one else would do this. What do you think I did to you? Bailey Hongzhuang asked faintly. Her eyes were filled with ridicule as she looked at Chewing Fei with a smile that wasn't a smile. After the three beasties saw Chewing Fei appear, their eyes brightened. So, this is the person who caused trouble for Master yesterday. Xiaohei narrowed her eyes. She originally wanted to find this person and teach her a lesson. She didn't expect this person to take the initiative to cause trouble for Master. This was really going against the heavens. It seems that Master didn't teach her a lesson yesterday. She still dares to be so arrogant today. Chapter 19:15. Hearing Bailey Hongzhuang's words, Chewing Fei wanted to say that her strength had regressed. However, after noticing that there were so many cultivators around, she swallowed the words that she was about to say. This kind of thing had a great impact on her. If she couldn't recover as soon as possible and other cultivators found out about it, then she might not be able to stay here to cultivate today. Therefore, she could only quickly recover her strength without anyone knowing. Only in this way could she keep her position. Everyone looked at Chewing Fei's hesitant look, and the curiosity in their eyes grew stronger. With Chewing Fei's reckless personality, logically speaking, she would definitely be unable to hold herself back and directly say it. To be able to make her reveal such a hesitant look, this matter must be really not simple. Pei Yifan also walked over. After seeing the conflict between Chewing Fei and Bailey Hongzhuang again, his brows furrowed tightly. He didn't understand why Chewing Fei kept finding trouble with Bailey Hongzhuang. Wasn't she looking for trouble for herself? However, after hearing Chewing Fei's words, he understood. It was likely that Bailey Hongzhuang's punishment for Chewing Fei yesterday was not as simple as what they saw. After all, Chewing Fei almost took Bailey Hongzhuang's life yesterday. Bailey Hongzhuang only punished her like that, which was indeed not heavy. After thinking for a moment, Chewing Fei stomped her feet and said, Bailey Hongzhuang, quickly restore my previous appearance. If you don't restore my strength once I report this to Elder Su, you will definitely suffer. Seeing the threat in Chewing Fei's eyes, Bailey Hongzhuang didn't care. Your words are really interesting. Restore your previous appearance? What was your previous appearance? What's the difference between now and then? Bailey Hongzhuang raised her eyebrows. Her beautiful and refined face rippled with a slight smile as she looked at Chewing Fei teasingly. Speaking of which, this Chewing Fei was really whimsical. It was easy to regress a cultivator's strength, but it was not easy to increase a cultivator's strength. From the moment she poisoned Chewing Fei, she never thought of restoring Chewing Fei's strength. What she wanted was for Chewing Fei to disappear from this place. Looking at Bailey Hongzhuang's deliberately pretending not to understand, Chewing Fei was even angrier. It was precisely because this matter couldn't be said casually that she tried to cover it up, but it only made it more conspicuous. It was fine if other people didn't understand, but Bailey Hongzhuang was definitely the most clear. But now Bailey Hongzhuang had to pretend that she didn't know, which really made her depressed to the extreme. For a moment, Chewing Fei. If he didn't say it, Bailey Hongzhuang would continue to pretend like this, but if he said it, everyone would know about it. At this moment, Chewing Fei only wanted to find a private place to talk to Bailey Hongzhuang alone. Let's find a place to talk, Chewing Fei said. Hearing this, Bailey Hongzhuang smiled and said, What can't be said in front of others? I'm not that familiar with you. There's no need to talk in private. Seeing Bailey Hongzhuang's appearance, Chewing Fei was furious. Bailey Hongzhuang was doing it on purpose. Chapter 19:16. Bailey Hongzhuang shrugged indifferently. After yesterday's matter, she didn't think that Chewing Fei would still be so stubborn. She truly deserved it. Then do as you wish. Just say it. I want to know, what can I gain from it? Hearing Bailey Hongzhuang's words, Chewing Fei's breathing became sluggish, and her face instantly became gloomy. It seemed that Bailey Hongzhuang grasped the fact that she didn't dare to say it, so she planned to intentionally humiliate her. Bailey Hongzhuang, are you sure you want me to say it? Chewing Fei asked back. Bailey Hongzhuang faintly nodded and said, Say it, tell me what it is. Seeing that, Chewing Fei slightly paused. Her mind couldn't help but ponder whether she should directly say it or not. The gazes of the three beasties fell on Chewing Fei. They were originally very dissatisfied with Chu Yingfei, and now that Chu Yingfei dared to be so aggressive, the anger in their hearts could be imagined. I say, what is it? If you have the ability, then say it. If you can't say it, then what are you doing here? Do you think that everyone has the same time as you? Xiao He mockingly looked at Chu Yingfei. Her voice was sharp and merciless. The sudden voice caused Chu Yingfei to be shocked for a moment. Her gaze couldn't help but look around. However, this voice clearly didn't belong to any of the core disciples. Just at this time, Chu Yingfei discovered that everyone's gazes were astonished as they looked at the white monstrous beast beside Bailey Hongzhuang. Heavens, did I hear wrong? This white monstrous beast can actually speak? I don't think I heard wrong. I also just heard this white monstrous beast speak. What kind of monstrous beast is this? It looks so small, but it actually knows the human language. This is too shocking. As everyone knew, although normal monstrous beasts could communicate with their masters, they simply couldn't speak the human language. However, Bailey Hongzhuang's white monstrous beast, at such a young age, was able to speak the human language. Just from this point, they were able to determine the level of this white monstrous beast. It was probably even more shocking than what they imagined. Chu Yingfei looked at the white demon beast in front of her in surprise. Her eyes were full of doubt. What are you? Chu Yingfei sized up Xiao He in front of him. Her white, furry body was like a round ball, which was very comical. However, her eyes were fixed on him, as if she had a deep hatred for him. You're the thing. Your whole family is trash. Xiao He's eyes were filled with anger. She didn't expect Chu Yingfei to be so rude. Her words were even more outrageous. Following Xiao He's words, Chu Yingfei was also dumbfounded. She clearly didn't expect Xiao He to have such a reaction. In fact, her words were not meant to insult Xiao He. However, she had never seen such a contract beast before, so she couldn't help but ask what it was. However, Xiao He obviously didn't think so. If it was said that it originally hated Chu Yingfei, then at this moment, it hated Chu Yingfei to the extreme. The surrounding cultivators couldn't help but laugh. This white monstrous beast reaction was really interesting. It was much more interesting than the monstrous beasts they usually saw. I'm not a thing, Chu Yingfei angrily said. Chapter 1917. When Chu Yingfei said that, she realized that something was wrong. However, it was too late when she realized it. Xiao He's words were like a slap to her face. You're not a thing. Your whole family is not a thing. Chu Yingfei hurriedly said, her face flushed red. She never thought that her slip of the tongue would be treated as a joke. Following Chu Yingfei's words, Xiao He's face instantly darkened. She looked at Chu Yingfei with a threatening gaze. You were the one who said that you're not a thing. Now you're blaming me? You're just a demonic beast. How dare you offend me? Do you believe that I won't kill you? Chu Yingfei looked at Xiao He unhappily. Although she was surprised that Xiao He could speak, Xiao He's current actions had already made her lose face. If she didn't express her attitude sternly, everyone would definitely laugh at her. When Chu Yingfei said that, Bailey Hongzhuang's originally cold face suddenly revealed a murderous intent. What did you just say? Say it again if you have the guts. Bailey Hongzhuang's voice was cold. Her ink-black phoenix eyes rippled with a sharp and frightening light. Chu Yingfei actually dared to say such words to Xiao He. She, Bailey Hongzhuang's contracted beast, was not allowed to be bullied by anyone. Feeling Bailey Hongzhuang's sharp gaze, Chu Yingfei only felt a prickling sensation on her body. She didn't dare to look at her directly. Even when she almost killed Bailey Hongzhuang, she had never seen Bailey Hongzhuang so terrifying. However, at this moment, Bailey Hongzhuang's gaze was like that of an Azura from hell. That dense, murderous intent made her heart tremble. Inexplicably, she felt her body turn cold. Her entire person had an indescribable feeling of discomfort. When everyone saw Bailey Hongzhuang's expression, their eyes changed and were dyed with a hint of fear. However, after thinking about it for a moment, everyone understood. If someone said in front of them that they wanted to kill their contract beast, presumably their attitude would not be better than Bailey Hongzhuang's current attitude. Contracted beasts were the most loyal companions of a cultivator. If someone dared to lay their hands on their contracted beasts, they would definitely not allow it. Hearing Bailey Hongzhuang's words, Chu Yingfei understood that this white demon beast was Bailey Hongzhuang's contract beast. So it's your contracted beast. No wonder it's the same as its master, so annoying. Chu Yingfei sneered. The first time she saw this white, demonic beast, she felt as disgusted as the first time she saw Bailey Hongzhuang. Where did this guy come from? Nothing good can come out of dog's mouth. Xiao Bai's eyes were filled with rage. This Chu Yingfei really had the ability to make people hate her the moment she opened her mouth. What's the point of talking so much to this kind of person? Just kill him. Bai Shi's attitude was cold. He didn't even want to look at Chu Yingfei. For this kind of person, just kill her. Bai Shi and Xiao Bai's attitudes were each more unyielding than the other. Over the years, they had followed their master everywhere and met many annoying cultivators. However, this was the first time they couldn't wait to kill someone. When everyone saw that Bai Shi and Xiao Bai could speak, their expressions became very interesting. Chapter 1918. Pei Yifan sized up Bailey Hongzhuang's 3 contracted beasts. They were a little different from other cultivators. The moment these 3 contracted beasts opened their mouths, he could tell what kind of state they were in. It seemed that Bailey Hongzhuang had restrained herself in Limitless Palace. If Chu Yingfei didn't meet Bailey Hongzhuang in Limitless Palace, but somewhere else, Bailey Hongzhuang would have already taken her life. Chu Yingfei sneered after seeing the arrogant attitude of the 3 contracted beasts. You want to kill me with just the 3 of you? What a fool's dream. Chu Yingfei's eyes were full of disdain. Even if her strength had dropped, she was still a green mirror rank 1. With the strength of these 3 contracted beasts, it was impossible for them to be her opponent. The 3 beasts narrowed their eyes and looked at each other. Were they being looked down upon? Master! The 3 beasts looked at Bailey Hongzhuang at the same time. They couldn't bear it anymore. This Chu Yingfei first said that she wanted to kill Xiao He, and now she dared to talk nonsense to them. If it didn't teach her a lesson, she wouldn't know why the flowers were so red. Looking at the eager looks of these 3 beasts, Bailey Hongzhuang thought for a moment and then said, Chu Yingfei, since you keep saying that you're stronger than my beasts, why don't you have a competition with them? How about it? Hearing Bailey Hongzhuang's words, Chu Yingfei glanced at the 3 beasts, and the ridicule in her eyes became even more obvious. Bailey Hongzhuang, what kind of joke are you playing? They want to be my opponent? Chu Yingfei wouldn't fall for Bailey Hongzhuang's trick at all. If she competed with Bailey Hongzhuang's contracted beasts, regardless of whether she won or lost, it would be a joke. If she won, as a cultivator and a core disciple of Limitless Palace, she would have an unfair advantage. But if she lost, she wouldn't be able to raise her head again. Therefore, Chu Yingfei would never fall for such trap. Seeing that Chu Yingfei did not immediately agree, the 3 beasts' eyes were filled with surprise. He originally thought that with Chu Yingfei's pig brain, she would immediately agree after hearing this. He didn't expect Chu Yingfei to be so smart at this time. The 3 beasties frowned. Chu Yingfei's previous actions really made them angry. If they didn't vent their anger, they definitely wouldn't be happy. Bailey Hongzhuang looked at the angry attitude of these 3 beasts. She was afraid that if she didn't give them a chance to teach Chu Yingfei a lesson today, they would definitely not let this go. She had been with the 3 beasties for such a long time, so she knew their personalities very well. Judging from Chu Yingfei's attitude today, there would be a conclusion between them sooner or later. There was no time like the present. He might as well let the 3 beasts perform today. Chu Yingfei, didn't you say that you wanted me to turn you into your previous appearance? As long as you win against my 3 contracted beasts, I'll agree to it. How about it? Bailey Hongzhuang looked at Chu Yingfei provocatively, her expression indifferent and confident. She believed that Chu Yingfei would definitely agree, because Chu Yingfei couldn't bear the consequences at all. Chu Yingfei, who was originally disdainful, after hearing Bailey Hongzhuang's words, her eyes changed slightly, and her heart became more and more resentful. She knew that this matter was caused by Bailey Hongzhuang. Chapter 1919. However, after hearing Bailey Hongzhuang's words, she was relieved. At least, this proved that Bailey Hongzhuang had a way to restore her. For a moment, Chu Yingfei kept thinking in her heart. Should she agree to Bailey Hongzhuang or refuse? If she agreed, she believed that with her strength, defeating these 3 contract beasts could be said to be a simple matter. However, it was always unfair for humans to win against beasts. Moreover, the black and white beasts were so small, it should be easy to fight. But if she didn't agree, she was afraid that Bailey Hongzhuang wouldn't hand over the antidote. She was still unwilling to tell others about this matter. After all, judging from Bailey Hongzhuang's previous attitude, if she didn't agree, Bailey Hongzhuang would definitely pretend that nothing happened. No matter how much she wanted it, it would be useless. After thinking about it, Chu Yingfei still chose to agree. This was the best solution at the moment. Okay, then I'll agree. As she spoke, Chu Yingfei's gaze couldn't help but fall on the 3 beasts. Her eyes were full of contempt and ridicule. However, with just these 3 little guys, if I kill them, don't regret it. Hearing Chu Yingfei's words, Bailey Hongzhuang and the 3 beasts' gazes turned cold. When the surrounding cultivators heard Chu Yingfei's excessive words, their expressions became interesting. They had seen people who were not afraid of death, but they had never seen someone who was not afraid of death like Chu Yingfei. Do you think we should tell Chu Yingfei about Bailey Hongzhuang's identity? Looking at her, it seems that she doesn't know anything about Bailey Hongzhuang's identity. With Chu Yingfei's current situation, even if we tell her about Bailey Hongzhuang's identity, it probably won't have any effect. Hearing this cultivator's words, everyone was silent for a moment. He was right. The conflict between Chu Yingfei and Bailey Hongzhuang had reached an irreversible point. Even if they wanted to mediate between them, it would be impossible. Moreover, if they could tell Chu Yingfei the relevant information now, Bailey Hongzhuang might think that they were on the same side as Chu Yingfei. This was not a good thing. Although Bailey Hongzhuang was the future wife of the young sect master of Tiangang sect, she was not from Limitless Palace. However, as long as they had a good relationship with Bailey Hongzhuang, it would be helpful in the future. Master, let me go on stage. Kill this guy in minutes. White Lion could no longer hold himself back. It had always been the one bullying other cultivators. No other cultivator had ever dared to speak to it in such a brazen manner. Little Black and Little White also rubbed their palms together. It seemed like they didn't display their strength in Limitless Palace, so everyone thought that they were incompetent. Today, they took advantage of this opportunity to show their strength. They wanted to let these people know that their strength was not as simple as it appeared on the surface. People couldn't be judged by their appearance, and beasts couldn't be judged by their appearance. Since you were so confident, then you and my contract beast will go to the life and death arena and decide the winner. How about it? Bailey Hongzhuang looked indifferent. When she said this, her tone was extremely determined, revealing a meaning that could not be disobeyed. Chu Yingfei was only at the 1st level of the Green Realm. Among the 3 beasts, Xiao He and Xiao Bai were at the 8th level of the Yellow Realm, and Baishir was at the 9th level of the Yellow Realm. Chapter 1920. During this period of time, the speed of improvement of the 3 beasts was already very amazing. Especially after cultivating in the desert world, the strength and combat strength of the 3 beasts had greatly increased. It was just that they didn't have many opportunities to show off, so no one knew. The current 3 beasts were completely different from when they first came out of the assessment competition. Hearing Bailey Hongzhuang's words, Chu Yingfei looked at Bailey Hongzhuang as if she was looking at a fool. If she and the beasts were to enter the life and death arena, wouldn't it be easy for her to kill the beasts? Did Bailey Hongzhuang want to give her a chance to take revenge? Or was she really so arrogant that she thought her contracted beasts could compete with her? However, since Bailey Hongzhuang gave her this chance to take revenge, she naturally wouldn't refuse. Contracted beasts were very important to every cultivator. She believed that if she killed Bailey Hongzhuang's contracted beasts, she would definitely be depressed to the extreme. However, Bailey Hongzhuang's previous words were clearly said in front of everyone. Even if she killed the contracted beasts, Bailey Hongzhuang still had to give her the antidote. She believed that when that time came, Bailey Hongzhuang would have no choice but to suffer, right? Bailey Hongzhuang, you said it yourself. If I kill your contracted beasts, you have to keep your word. Chewing Fei emphasized. She wouldn't give Bailey Hongzhuang the chance to regret. After seeing this scene, this person had been worried for Bailey Hongzhuang. Originally, with Bailey Hongzhuang's strength, it was definitely not difficult to kill Chewing Fei on the life and death arena. However, they couldn't understand why Bailey Hongzhuang chose to let the 3 contracted beasts do it. If something went wrong, Bailey Hongzhuang would probably regret it. After all, although Bailey Hongzhuang's 3 contracted beast levels were high, they still looked very young. Their strength couldn't be compared to Chewing Fei's. Pei Yifan walked over to Bailey Hongzhuang when he saw this. His handsome face was filled with concern. Miss Bailey, this Chewing Fei is not weak. If you directly let your demonic beast fight her, isn't it too risky? Pei Yifan reminded. Bailey Hongzhuang's 3 contracted beasts were all very high-leveled. It was hard to find such characters on a normal day. Although he didn't know why Bailey Hongzhuang could contract 3 demonic beasts, even if she could contract other demonic beasts other than these 3, it wouldn't be easy to find another demonic beast of this level in the future. Bailey Hongzhuang glanced at Pei Yifan. She knew that Pei Yifan meant well. However, she had enough confidence in the 3 beasts. The 3 beasts would also encounter a certain amount of danger in the future. Many times, battles were unavoidable. If they didn't fight because of the danger, their growth in the future would be completely limited. Thank you for your reminder. However, the 3 of them are determined to fight. Bailey Hongzhuang's face rippled with a faint smile. Her expression was calm and without the slightest bit of worry. Following Bailey Hongzhuang's words, Pei Yifan couldn't help but look at the 3 demonic beasts. That's right. We're definitely going to fight this battle. Xiao He clenched her fist and said, the battle hasn't started yet. The final result isn't clear yet. Perhaps the one who dies on the life and death arena will be Chewing Fei. Chapter 1921. No matter when, it was always full of confidence in its own strength. Even if the opponent's cultivation was stronger than theirs, its fighting spirit would not weaken at all. After all, over the years, many cultivators who claimed to be stronger than its master had died in its master's hands. This Chewing Fei would die in its hands. Looking at the 3 beasts' confident appearance, Pei Yifan's eyes couldn't help but be filled with astonishment. As a disciple of Limitless Palace, he had seen many contract beasts, but he had never seen contract beasts as domineering as the 3 in front of him. Obviously, under such circumstances, the 3 beasts would not give up on the life and death ring. Since that was the case, he didn't say anything else. He believed that since Bailey Hongzhuang and the 3 beasts were so confident, it meant that they had the confidence to win. No one was stupid, and Bailey Hongzhuang was even more so. As the first place of the assessment competition, if she didn't have some ability, it was impossible for her to achieve such results. He wasn't a cultivator selected from the assessment competition, but he had a certain understanding of the assessment competition. During the 2 years of the assessment competition, cultivators were in an extremely cruel environment. Schemes were calculated and dangers were everywhere. Inexperienced or simple-minded cultivators would not be able to survive in such an environment. Thinking about it, Bailey Hongzhuang was also a person with both ability and wisdom. No problem. As long as you can walk down the ring alive, I will definitely tell you. Bailey Hongzhuang gave Chewing Fei a definite answer. But the premise was that Chewing Fei could walk down the life and death ring alive. After seeing Bailey Hongzhuang's calm appearance, Chewing Fei, who was originally full of confidence, couldn't help but worry. She always felt that Bailey Hongzhuang was too calm. Could it be that these 3 contract beasts were powerful? Chewing Fei's gaze couldn't help but fall on the 3 contract beasts. But no matter how she looked at them, they didn't seem to be very powerful. However, to be on the safe side, Chewing Fei still carefully sensed them. The final result was as she had guessed. Although these 3 contract beasts were a bit stronger than the other contract beasts, they still hadn't reached the green realm. They were definitely not her opponent. Chewing Fei relaxed a bit and said, no problem. Since that's the case, let's go to the life and death ring now. Chewing Fei quickly said, as if she was afraid that Bailey Hongzhuang would regret it. The current situation was extremely beneficial to her, but if Bailey Hongzhuang reacted and suddenly changed her mind, then she would be at a disadvantage. She had already thought that she didn't want other cultivators to know that her strength had weakened. None of the three contracted beasts had reached the green realm, so she only needed to kill them as quickly as possible. No one would notice that her cultivation had weakened. Thinking of this, Chu Yingfei couldn't help but be excited. This plan was really too good. When everyone saw Chu Yingfei's fear that Bailey Hongzhuang would regret it, they felt helpless. Only Bailey Hongzhuang would make such a decision. If it were them, they wouldn't let Chu Yingfei take advantage of them. Chapter 1922. I don't know. She seems to be quite confident. Chu Yingfei's strength is actually not weak. Once she fully unleashes her combat power, these three contracted beasts will not be able to escape the fate of death. Everyone sighed. However, these thoughts could only be discussed in private. Bailey Hongzhuang had obviously already thought a plan. No matter how they advised her, it would be useless. Immediately after, everyone set off towards the life and death ring. Although the life and death ring existed in Limitless Palace, apart from cultivators with deep hatred, most people would not choose to go there. Therefore, when Bailey Hongzhuang and the rest arrived near the life and death ring, there was no one there. This is the life and death ring. Pei Yifan introduced to Bailey Hongzhuang. Hearing this, Bailey Hongzhuang nodded. The life and death ring was similar to the martial arts stage. However, it was much bigger than an ordinary martial arts stage. When Bailey Hongzhuang and the rest arrived near the life and death ring, many cultivators in the surroundings were attracted by Bailey Hongzhuang and the rest. Usually, once someone appeared near the life and death ring, it would attract everyone's attention. After all, they were all cultivators from the same sect. Very few people would cause such a scene. Therefore, once someone caused a ruckus in the life and death ring, it would attract many cultivators to watch. However, when the surrounding cultivators saw that the cultivators who came were all core disciples of Limitless Palace, they were even more surprised. Oh my God, what's going on today? The ones who came are actually core disciples? The cultivators' faces were filled with disbelief. Although they were all disciples of Limitless Palace, there was a huge difference between the status of core disciples and them. Not only that, but they also cultivated in different places. Usually, they did not have many chances to see core disciples. Core disciples were like the pyramid of Limitless Palace's disciples. There were very few of them. Logically speaking, the possibility of a conflict between core disciples with few people was very small. Moreover, core disciples had a bright future ahead of them. They did not expect that there would be core disciples walking towards the life and death ring. This was really rare. This is the first time I've seen a core disciple come to the life and death ring. There's going to be a good show today. Look at that woman in a white dress. Isn't she the one who came to our sect with the young sect master of Tiangang sect 2 days ago? That's right, it's her. At this moment, many people recognized Bailey Hongzhuang. After all, it wasn't the first time that Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichun came to Limitless Palace. This was the second time. He remembered that the last time they came, they only stayed for a short while in Limitless Palace. However, this time, they never left. At first, everyone was curious about what Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichun were doing here. Now that they saw Bailey Hongzhuang with the core disciples, they were even more surprised. Who is this white-clothed woman? Why would he be with the core disciples? Is she also a core disciple? Everyone was puzzled. Not just anyone could become a core disciple. One had to go through layers upon layers of selections and tests to become a core disciple of Limitless Palace. Chapter 1923. If this white-clothed woman could become a core disciple of Limitless Palace just because she had a relationship with the young sect master of Tiangang sect, it would make them feel too unbalanced. When Chu Yingfei heard that Bailey Hongzhuang came to Limitless Palace with a young sect master of Heavenly Palace, she couldn't help but frown. Could it be Bailey Hongzhuang knew Di Beichun? When Chu Yingfei thought of this, she felt that it was impossible. The young sect master of Tiangang sect had a noble status. How could someone like Bailey Hongzhuang be qualified to know him? Let's begin. Let's fight on the life and death arena. Bailey Hongzhuang didn't waste time. Since she came to the life and death arena, it was to end this matter. When Chu Yingfei saw that Bailey Hongzhuang couldn't wait to start, the joy in her eyes became even stronger. She also couldn't wait to start the competition. As long as she killed these 3 contract beasts, she could recover her original strength. One had to know that she was clearly Green Realm level 5. Now that she suddenly became Green Realm level 1, this feeling was really uncomfortable. Okay, then let's end it as soon as possible. Chu Yingfei wasn't afraid at all. Since Bailey Hongzhuang was anxious to send the 3 contract beasts to their deaths, she naturally wouldn't stop her. As long as her strength recovered, she would definitely take revenge. Just as Chu Yingfei was about to step onto the arena, a figure walked to Chu Yingfei's side. Chu Yingfei, you want to enter the life and death arena? The woman's voice was filled with surprise. This person was Chu Yingfei's good friend, Jia Xueqiao. Seeing Jia Xueqiao's appearance, Chu Yingfei also had a hint of surprise on her face as she nodded her head. Yes, it's me. Who did you have a conflict with? It's so serious that you want to enter the life and death arena. Jia Xueqiao's face was filled with worry. She and Chu Yingfei came to Limitless Palace together. Chu Yingfei's results were better than hers, so she became a core disciple earlier. Now she was still working hard. She only hoped that she could become a core disciple in a few days. However, she didn't expect that Chu Yingfei would fight with someone to the point of entering the life and death arena. One had to know that once they entered the life and death arena, it was a life and death battle. Unless one person died, this competition wouldn't end. Didn't this mean that after Chu Yingfei entered the life and death arena, she would lose her life? Looking at Jia Xueqiao's worried expression, Chu Yingfei patted her shoulder calmly, her face filled with a relaxed smile. Don't worry, I won't be in danger. There won't be any danger at all. Chu Yingfei was confident and certain. If she couldn't even defeat 3 contracted beasts that hadn't reached the Green Realm, then her title as a core disciple wouldn't be worthy of her name. Looking at Chu Yingfei's confident appearance, Jia Xueqiao's eyes couldn't help but reveal a hint of doubt. She chews with Chu's palace. S heart sect as if she's weeks. However, Chu Yingfei was so confident right now. This was a bit too strange. Choose with her asks. Chu Yingfei smiled and waved her hand, saying, not human. Chapter 1924. Looking at Chu Yingfei's smug look, Bailey Hongzhuang said indifferently, you could be proud of yourself now. Be careful that you become a dead person later. Following Bailey Hongzhuang's words, Chu Yingfei's expression became slightly gloomy. You just wait to collect the corpse of her contract beast. Seeing that Chu Yingfei's opponent was actually Bailey Hongzhuang's contract beast, the surprise in Jia Xueqiao's eyes became more and more intense. Chu Yingfei, who is this girl? How did you offend her? Bailey Hongzhuang, the new core disciple. Chu Yingfei said indifferently, she's not a big deal. If I offend her, then so be it. As a cultivator, the number of people she offended on a daily basis was countless. If she offended someone, then she offended someone. There was nothing to care about. As long as the other party couldn't do anything to her, then there was no need to worry. Bailey Hongzhuang? Jia Xueqiao frowned. Why is this name so familiar? I seem to have heard it somewhere before. At this moment, a surprised voice sounded from the crowd. Isn't this our assessment's first place, Bailey Hongzhuang? I remember that she entered Tiangang's sect. How did she appear in Limitless Palace? Chapter 1925. After discovering this point, Chu Yingfei's face instantly turned ugly. If Bailey Hongzhuang was just an ordinary disciple, it wouldn't matter if she offended her. But if Bailey Hongzhuang was the future young sect master's wife, then she had offended a huge opponent. She couldn't stay in Limitless Palace forever, but once she left Limitless Palace, as long as Bailey Hongzhuang gave the word, she would have no place to go. It would be a simple matter to take her life. Chu Yingfei only felt her scalp go numb. She never thought that there would be such a result. She couldn't understand. If Bailey Hongzhuang really had such an extraordinary identity, why did Bailey Hongzhuang just silently accept it when she insulted her? If it was an ordinary person, Their attitude would have been arrogant and insufferably arrogant when faced with this situation. Bailey Hongzhuang was too strange. Chu Yingfei was depressed to the extreme. Which of the extraordinary cultivators she met on a daily basis didn't have their noses in the air? Why was Bailey Hongzhuang different from the others? If Bailey Hongzhuang knew what Chu Yingfei was thinking at this moment, she would be speechless. She never looked at others with her head held high. She was too lazy to pay attention to some meaningless quarrels. Generally speaking, cultivators with a real background wouldn't look down on others. Obviously, the people Chu Yingfei met before weren't really extraordinary people. What should I do now? Chu Yingfei's shoulders kept thinking, but now she was riding a tiger and couldn't get off. If she admitted her mistake to Bailey Hongzhuang now, she was afraid that Bailey Hongzhuang might not forgive her. Moreover, if she did this, she would really become a laughingstock. But if she didn't admit her mistake, then her future would be bleak. Chu Yingfei had never regretted it so much. Although she was arrogant and liked to ridicule some cultivators, she only ridiculed cultivators who didn't pose any threat to her. After all, there were some people in this world that she could not afford to offend. Therefore, she would not choose to offend them. However, he didn't expect such an accident to happen this time. Jia Xueqiao swallowed a mouthful of saliva. She couldn't help but look at Bailey Hongzhuang with fear and worry. In the next moment, Jia Xueqiao took a few steps back. He quietly walked away from Chu Yingfei's side, looking like he wanted to distance himself from Chu Yingfei. She regretted standing next to Chu Yingfei, but she believed that Bailey Hongzhuang wouldn't notice her too much. As long as she left now, she would not have anything to do with Chu Yingfei. Even though her relationship with Chu Yingfei was extremely good, she had no choice but to leave at a time like this. After all, his future was the most important. This was the consequence of Chu Yingfei offending someone. There was no need for her to bear the consequences with Chu Yingfei. Chu Yingfei also noticed Jia Xueqiao's actions. Her originally gloomy face was now dyed with a hint of paleness. It was extremely unsightly. However, at a time like this, she couldn't say that Jia Xueqiao's actions were wrong. Every man for himself, and the devil takes the hindmost. Everyone would think for themselves. Let's begin now, Bailey Hongzhuang said slowly. Chapter 1926. Hearing Bailey Hongzhuang's words, Chu Yingfei hesitated for a while, but at this time, the arrow was already knocked on the bow. She had no way out, so she could only continue like this. Thinking of this, Chu Yingfei immediately walked onto the life and death ring. At least, she couldn't lose face in front of others now. After Chu Yingfei walked onto the stage, Bailey Hongzhuang's gaze couldn't help but fall on the three beasties. Are you guys confident? Bailey Hongzhuang's lips curved into a faint smile. Although it was a questioning tone, her tone already revealed confidence. Naturally, no problem. The three beasties said in unison. See if I don't beat her to a pulp. Xiao Hei clenched her fists, her eyes filled with anger. Chu Yingfei actually dared to provoke them in public. They must let Chu Yingfei know how powerful they were. Seeing the three beasties full of fighting spirit, Bailey Hongzhuang's smile widened. Thinking back, whether it was her or the three beasties, their strength was very weak. However, they were now able to stand on their own. In the next moment, the three beasties also jumped onto the stage. When the surrounding cultivators saw that Chu Yingfei's opponent wasn't Bailey Hongzhuang, but the three contract beasties, their eyes were filled with surprise. What's going on? Is Chu Yingfei going to fight the three contract beasties? From the looks of it, that should be the case. But how bored is this Chu Yingfei? She actually chose to fight the contract beasties, and even went onto the life and death ring? I don't understand. I remember that this Chu Yingfei was originally the weakest among the core disciples. I just didn't expect her to fall to the point of fighting with contract beasties. It really makes people speechless. Everyone sighed. Although battles on the life and death ring rarely happened, they had seen it before. However, they had never seen a situation where cultivators and contract beasties fought before. This was really a new thing. Chu Yingfei naturally heard the discussions of the other cultivators, and her expression was awkward. As early as when she agreed to fight with the 3 contract beasties, she already knew that she would be ridiculed like this. However, she had to recover her strength, so she could only choose to agree to Bailey Hongzhuang. Now, the more she thought about it, the more she felt that it wasn't worth it. It was a pity that she had already reached this step. It was inevitable that she would become a laughingstock. The 3 beasties stood opposite Chewing Fei and looked at each other. "I'll go first. I've been annoyed by her for a long time." Blackie rubbed his palms together as his eyes locked onto Chewing Fei. Although its cultivation, its strength, Chu's strength wasn't something that Chewing Fei couldn't compare. Through this period of cultivation in the desert world, not only had its strength increased, but its speed had also far exceeded that of ordinary people. As Hey Hongzhuang Huang, Hey, Xiao Hey, Xiao, Xiao, Hey Yi Hey. However, when Little Black said this, Little White frowned and said, "No, I don't like her even more. I must teach her a lesson first." It had been holding back its anger before. Now that it finally had the chance to fight with Chewing Fei, it couldn't hold back. "Don't worry. Leave this kind of thing to me. I'll bite off her neck," Baisher said. Its blood was already boiling. Chapter 1927. Hearing White Lion's words, Xiao He and Xiao Bai were speechless. "White Lion, if you attack directly, then what are Xiao Bai and I going to do? Wouldn't that be like heroes being useless?" The 3 beasties had been fighting together for a long time. Xiao He and Xiao Bai were very familiar with White Lion's fighting style. For White Lion, the simplest and most violent way was to charge forward and bite off the opponent's neck. One had to know that in this desert world, White Lion had ended many battles this way. However, Chewing Fei had offended them so much. If White Lion settled her so easily, how could they vent their anger? "I'll go first, then Xiao He," Xiao Bai said slowly. "White Lion, you go last. You'll end it." White Lion was stunned for a moment after hearing Xiao He and Xiao Bai's words. However, after thinking about it carefully, it was indeed so. "Okay, then you guys go first. I'll end it," White Lion said. Xiao Bai nodded in satisfaction. Now, it had the chance to attack first. However, Xiao He quickly said, "No, I should go first, then Xiao Bai. Didn't we already agree on this? Why did you change your mind?" Xiao Bai was dissatisfied. It was not easy to come to an agreement, but Xiao He still disagreed. "That's what you and White Lion agreed on. I didn't agree on this with you," Xiao He said. Chewing Fei was standing on the other side, preparing to fight the 3 beasties. Her emotions were also very complicated. Now that she knew Bailey Hongzhuang's true identity, she did not dare to be as casual as before. If she was prepared to take the lives of the 3 beasties before, she did not dare to do so now. How important were contract beasts to cultivators? If she killed Bailey Hongzhuang's contract beast, then the enmity between her and Bailey Hongzhuang would be irreconcilable. However, just as Chewing Fei was thinking about this, she heard the 3 beasts fighting to be the first to attack her. Especially from their conversation, it was as if they did not put her in their eyes at all. From the arrogant attitude of the 3 beasts, it was as if they could easily kill her. Chewing Fei was in a very bad mood after being looked down upon by 3 contract beasts that were weaker than her. When the 3 beasts were talking, they didn't hold back at all. In any case, between them and Chewing Fei, only one of them could walk off the stage alive. They were determined to take Chewing Fei's life today. Bailey Hongzhuang felt very helpless when she saw the 3 beasts in such a state. This was like an unequal division of the spoils. She was really worried that before Chewing Fei could be dealt with, the 3 of them would start fighting amongst themselves. Although she said that, the smile in Bailey Hongzhuang's eyes gradually deepened. The 3 beasts had always liked to fight. They would fight for this kind of opportunity with all their might, so it was very normal. When Bailey Hongzhuang felt that it was very normal, the surrounding cultivators were not calm. "Damn, am I seeing things? These 3 contract beasts are fighting to kill Chewing Fei? Since when did core disciples become so easy to deal with? Could it be that these 3 contract beasts are too arrogant? Look, Chewing Fei's face is red." Chapter 1928. Let the competition begin. Pei Yifun's voice quickly sounded. At this time, He needed to temporarily act as the referee. As Pei Yifun's voice fell, the three beasts also stopped bickering, and their faces quickly filled with a touch of seriousness. Although they usually had a cheerful appearance, when faced with serious matters, they were very serious. After this discussion, they also came to a conclusion. Xiao He and Xiao Bai would start together, and Bai Shi would go last. Chu Yingfei looked at the three contract beasts in front of her and also made a decision in her heart. These three contract beasts looked down on her so much, she must definitely teach them a lesson. Only in this way could she regain her face. However, in the end, she would leave the three contract beasts alive. Thinking about it, Bailey Hongzhuang would also change her opinion of her after seeing this scene. Perhaps there was still room for negotiation. Thinking of this, Chu Yingfei's heart was filled with excitement. Originally, this was already a dead end, but she didn't expect that after careful consideration, there was still some possibility. She was really too smart. In the next moment, a surge of elemental energy surged out from Chu Yingfei's body. Now, she could only display the strength of a Green Realm Level 1. But in this situation, it shouldn't arouse the suspicion of other cultivators. When everyone saw that Chu Yingfei only displayed the strength of a Green Realm Level 1, they couldn't help but have a touch of surprise in their eyes. I remember that Chu Yingfei's strength had already broken through to Green Realm Level 5. Why is she only Green Realm Level 1 now? Thinking about it, she wants to be merciful. After all, if she still has to use all her strength to fight with three contract beasts, it would be a bit embarrassing. That's right, these three contract beasts look very young. Their strength definitely won't be too strong. Why use a sledgehammer to kill a chicken? After seeing the changes in the seal, the core disciples also had some guesses in their hearts. Presumably, Chu Yingfei didn't dare to be enemies with Bailey Hongzhuang after knowing her true identity, so she did this. I knew that if Chu Yingfei knew Bailey Hongzhuang's identity and still clamored with Bailey Hongzhuang, then there's really something wrong with her brain. Unfortunately, Chu Yingfei found out too late. Even if she realizes it now, I'm afraid Bailey Hongzhuang won't care about her. Everyone sighed faintly. In fact, they also felt that Chu Yingfei was really unlucky this time. After hearing everyone's discussion, the three beasts' faces didn't look good. Only they knew that Chu's current strength was only Green Realm Level 1. How was she purposely letting them? Yet, in the eyes of others now, they took advantage of Chu Yingfei. It was really depressing. At this moment, Chu Yingfei was in a very good mood. She didn't expect that she would benefit from this disaster and gain a good reputation. After seeing Chu Yingfei's face, Chu Zi's uses eyes. Yingfei's let's teach her a good lesson. Let's see if she can still be so proud later. After saying that, Xiao He and Xiao Bai looked at each other and immediately rushed towards Chu Yingfei. In the process of rushing, Xiao He and Xiao Bai's strength also appeared in front of everyone's eyes. Yellow Realm Level 8. Chapter 1929. After seeing that Xiao He and Xiao Bai's strength had reached Yellow Realm Level 8, the cultivator's eyes were filled with shock. One had to know that Xiao He and Xiao Bai's appearance was too deceiving. The two little guys were the same as when Bailey Hongzhuang first saw them. Their figures did not change at all. If they could not speak the human language, normal cultivators would only think that they were contracted beasts that had just been contracted not long ago. Moreover, they were the type that was only meant for viewing. These two contracted beasts are at Yellow Realm Level 8. They're really strong. You really can't judge a beast by its appearance. These two contracted beasts are Yellow Realm Level 8 now. They will definitely become stronger in the future. Bailey Hongzhuang actually has two contracted beasts of this level. It's really enviable. According to their understanding, Bailey Hongzhuang's cultivation was only Green Realm Level 1. The strength of these two contracted beasts was not much weaker than Bailey Hongzhuang. Once they fought, these two contracted beasts will be Bailey Hongzhuang's left and right arms. With these two helpers, the cultivator's combat strength would be different from before. Xiao He and Xiao Bai did not care about the other cultivators' praises at this moment. They only wanted to teach Chu Yingfei a lesson. The two figures quickly leaped closer and turned into two rays of light, one black and one white. that shot towards Chu Yingfei. Chu Yingfei looked at the two figures that were quickly approaching her. Her gaze froze, and her fist went up at the same time. Bang! Chu Yingfei's fist and Xiao Bai's body collided directly. Xiao Bai's body bounced back, and Chu Yingfei's body also retreated a few steps. With this exchange, Chu Yingfei's face instantly turned a bit ugly. Originally, she thought that these two contracted beasts did not have the ability to fight against her. However, after this exchange, she suddenly realized that the black contracted beast's strength was not weaker than hers. In fact, it was stronger than her. This was simply inconceivable. Even though demonic beasts were usually stronger than cultivators, this demonic beast cultivation was 2 levels lower than hers. Logically speaking, such a difference in cultivation should be able to make up for this point, but now it didn't. If one of the contracted beasts could have such strength, then if all 3 were to attack together, it would not be so easy to win. When Xiao Bai and Chu Yingfei collided, Xiao He turned around and attacked Chu Yingfei from behind. What it and Little White were best at was creating a diversion, and this kind of fighting style could often achieve very good results. Bang! Xiao He's body turned into a round ball and fiercely attacked Chu Yingfei's back. Chu Yingfei didn't underestimate Xiao He either. Since the black furball's power was astonishing, the white furball's power must not be weak either. She definitely couldn't underestimate it. Otherwise, she wouldn't feel good if such a force landed on her body. However, when Chu Yingfei went to deal with Xiao He, Xiao Bai's attack came up again. Xiao He and Xiao Bai were already proficient in creating a diversion. Sometimes they would only pretend to attack, but Chu Yingfei would miss. Chu Yingfei stood in the middle of the life and death ring and constantly paid attention to her surroundings. Her mental strength was highly concentrated. If she was even slightly careless, she could be attacked directly. Chapter 1930. The situation on the life and death ring was far beyond the cultivator's expectations. Instantly, everyone's gazes fell on the fighting stage in astonishment. This situation was completely different from what they had imagined. Oh my God, these two contracted beasts are really powerful. Their cultivation is clearly not as high as Chu Yingfei's, but their battle strength is not weak at all. The entire battle's rhythm is completely controlled by these two contracted beasts. If Chu Yingfei doesn't find her rhythm soon, she will die. Now, only 2 contracted beasts are fighting. The other contracted beast hasn't made a move yet. If these 3 contracted beasts attack together, wouldn't Chu Yingfei be finished? Pei Yifan and the other core disciples didn't know what to say after seeing this scene. Previously, they all thought that this battle was because Bailey Hongzhuang was too impulsive and made a wrong decision. However, now it seemed that Bailey Hongzhuang had a card up her sleeve. It was because she had enough confidence that Bailey Hongzhuang chose to let these 3 contracted beasts fight. They never thought that these 3 contracted beasts' battle strength would be so much stronger than their own. However, when everyone's gaze fell on Bailey Hongzhuang, they quickly reacted. In fact, Bailey Hongzhuang's battle strength was much stronger than her cultivation. At least, they had never seen a Green Realm Level 1 cultivator being able to capture a Green Realm Level 5 cultivator. Moreover, Chu Yingfei didn't have any resistance at all in Bailey Hongzhuang's hands. Thinking of this, everyone couldn't help but sigh. Like Master, like contracted beasts. If these contracted beasts followed normal cultivators and not Bailey Hongzhuang, they probably wouldn't have such heaven-defying battle strength. Xiao He and Xiao Bai had been unhappy with Chu Yingfei for a long time. Therefore, now that they had the chance to teach Chu Yingfei a lesson, they were no longer in a hurry. Instead, they decided to make fun of Chu Yingfei. This fellow humiliated them and even dared to mock their master. This was simply a double sin. Ever since the end of the assessment, they had not encountered such an ignorant cultivator for a long time. In addition, they had been cultivating peacefully in Tiangang's sect. Now that they saw such a cultivator again, they only felt that the combative cells in their body were boiling. "Look here," Xiao He said with a smile. Hearing Xiao He's words, Chu Yingfei couldn't help but look in Xiao He's direction. However, Xiao He stood there without moving. Bang! Chewing Fei's figure suddenly fell to the ground. Her eyebrows were tightly knitted, and a painful expression flashed across her face. It turned out that when Xiao He attracted Chewing Fei's attention, Xiao Bai's attack had already landed on Chewing Fei. The sudden pain almost caused Chewing Fei to be unable to bear it. These two contracted beasts, whether it was strength or speed, were extremely astonishing. It was extremely difficult for her to dodge. At this instant, Chewing Fei truly regretted to the extreme. She shouldn't have agreed to enter the life and death ring. Bailey Hongzhuang didn't want to give her a chance to take revenge at all. She wanted to enter life here. Chapter 1931. After Chewing Fei fell down, she immediately stood up because she couldn't fall down at all. Once she fell, the attacks of these two contract beasts would come one after another. When that time came, she would really be on the path to death. After Chewing Fei quickly stood up, her gaze immediately locked on Xiao He and Xiao Bai, her eyes filled with anger. If it was a head-on fight, these two contract beasts were no match for her at all. However, these two contract beasts didn't fight her head-on at all. Instead, they used this kind of diversion and sneak attack, making her helpless. Coupled with the extremely fast speed of these two contract beasts, she couldn't keep up with them at all. Therefore, under such circumstances, she could only passively suffer. If it was a head-on fight, it would be fine if she was defeated, at least she would be convinced. However, under such circumstances, she only felt that she was extremely sullen. The feeling of punching cotton had no use at all, and it was indescribably uncomfortable. Under such angry emotions, Chewing Fei's gaze was fixed on Xiao He and Xiao Bai. She couldn't continue like this. If the rhythm of this battle was always controlled by these two contract beasts, then she wouldn't have a chance to make a comeback. Thinking of this, Chewing Fei's hands quickly flipped over. In the process of this fight, she realized that whether it was in terms of speed or strength, she couldn't compare to these two contract beasts, so the only way she could win was to use martial arts. The fact that contract beasts couldn't use martial arts was their weakness and also their shortcoming. As long as she could use this point, once the martial arts landed on these two contract beasts, they would be seriously injured. This was the best way, and also the way for her to turn the tables. After everyone saw Chewing Fei's actions, they understood that Chewing Fei had already thought of a way to deal with these two contract beasts. Once Chewing Fei understood this point, the situation of these two contract beasts wouldn't be as good as before. After seeing Chewing Fei's actions, Xiao He and Xiao Bai also understood Chewing Fei's thoughts. However, they wouldn't let Chewing Fei do this so easily. Just as Chewing Fei was about to use her martial arts, Xiao He and Xiao Bai rushed up again. As long as Chewing Fei's hand seal was interrupted, not only would she not be able to use her martial arts, but she would also suffer a backlash. At this time, it was time to see which one of them was faster. When Chewing Fei saw that the two contract beasts were about to interrupt her hand seal, her expression immediately became ugly. She didn't expect these two contract beasts to be so smart, completely different from the contract beasts she usually saw. Little Black and Little White looked at each other. They originally planned to tease Chewing Fei, but they didn't expect that Chewing Fei had already found a way. Since that was the case, they couldn't continue wasting their time. Otherwise, once Chewing Fei made a comeback, wouldn't they lose all face? Therefore, they had to take advantage of S as soon as possible. When Ing Fei S hand seal, choose Ing Fei S. The Ing Fei's Ing Fei and the completely Xiao, the usually I Fi the Ixio. Chapter 1932. Since that was the case, they couldn't waste any more time. Otherwise, once Chewing Fei turned the tables, wouldn't they lose all their dignity? Therefore, they had to take advantage of this opportunity to get rid of Chewing Fei as soon as possible. In the next moment, Xiao He and Xiao Bai's aura changed. When Baisher saw Xiao He and Xiao Bai's expressions, he understood what was going on. He had been waiting for Xiao He and Xiao Bai to vent his anger. Once they were done, it would be time for Baisher to appear. Under everyone's surprised gazes, Baisher, who had been standing still at the side, suddenly made his move. However, Baisher's action stunned everyone. That was because Baisher's speed was like a cheetah. It quickly rushed in front of Chewing Fei. Its speed was even faster than Xiao He and Xiao Bai, who had shocked them earlier. Isn't this contracted beast a little too fast? It's as fast as the wind. Yeah, I only blinked my eyes, and this contract beast had already rushed in front of Chewing Fei. That's too shocking. Bailey Hongzhuang's contract beasts are getting stronger and stronger. It seems like this contract beast is even stronger than the other two contract beasts. When Baisher appeared, everyone could already feel its unique aura and strength. When Pei Yifan and the others saw Baisher like this, they finally understood that Baisher wasn't bluffing when he said that he could bite Chewing Fei's neck in one bite. He really did have the ability to do so. Xiao He and Xiao Bai's eyes lit up when they saw Baisher make his move. The previous battle had already ended. What they needed now was to end the battle quickly. They wouldn't give Chewing Fei any chance to turn the tables. That was because they needed to prove their strength through this battle. At the same time, they also needed to show how powerful their master was. Bailey Hongzhuang looked at the situation on the life and death ring. Although Chewing Fei was preparing to use her martial skills, she was also very familiar with her three contract beasts. They had encountered such a situation before, but the three beasts' reactions had always been very fast. This was something she and Di Beichun discovered together. To the three beasts, their strength was not something that ordinary cultivators could compare with. After improving in the desert world, their speed had also rapidly increased. This was their advantage. However, when faced with a cultivator's martial skills, the three beasts were a little clumsy. However, after some consideration by Di Beichun and her, even if the cultivator used martial arts, it would take a certain amount of time. As long as the three beasts could interrupt the opponent's martial arts during this period of time, then there was a possibility of winning. This was a competition's competition, and she had a certain degree of confidence in the three beasts. In the previous battle, Chewing Fei's confidence had long been destroyed by the three beasts. Even if she had a plan, she would be in the end, as under such circumstances, it would be easy for the three beasts' win. Pei Yifan couldn't help but size up Bailey Hongzhuang. On this battle stage, it could be said that the onlooker sees the game more clearly than the person involved. Although Xiao He and Xiao Bai's battle style was a little too much for the eyes to take in, it wasn't impossible to break through this point. Chapter 1933. Now, if Chewing Fei used her martial skill, Bailey Hongzhuang's contracted beast would be in danger. However, when Pei Yifan looked at Bailey Hongzhuang, he saw that Bailey Hongzhuang's expression was still normal. She even had a smile on her face. In Pei Yifan's opinion, Bailey Hongzhuang was a very mysterious woman. She was always as calm as the wind. No matter what the situation was, she always had a nonchalant look on her face. It was as if the matter did not happen to her, and she was just a bystander. She always had a confident smile on her face. It was as if all the variables did not exceed her expectations. And it was this confident smile that made people feel an indescribable power. To be honest, when he knew that Bailey Hongzhuang's cultivation was at the first level of the Green Realm, he did not think much of Bailey Hongzhuang. This was because a cultivator with such strength was not his opponent at all. However, after seeing Bailey Hongzhuang's various differences, he felt that Bailey Hongzhuang would be an extremely terrifying opponent in the future. It was no wonder that she was able to get first place in the assessment competition. Her strength and methods, as well as her temperament, were far from what ordinary people could compare to. In fact, most of the first places in the assessment competition were men. It was rare for a woman to appear. Once a woman got first place in the assessment competition, she could be said to be a genius among women. He felt that as long as Bailey Hongzhuang was given some time, her development in the future would be extremely terrifying. Following Baisher's appearance, Chewing Fei panicked. Previously, when Xiao He and Xiao Bai appeared, she was already overwhelmed. Now that the third contracted beast had appeared, and it seemed to be stronger than the other two contracted beasts, she felt even more pressure in her heart. Chewing Fei's eyes flashed with intense panic. Her face was also dyed with a touch of paleness. The current situation was too troublesome. She did not have the confidence to continue fighting at all. Her confidence had been completely shattered when she fought with Xiao He and Xiao Bai. Her strength was clearly stronger than Little Black and Little White, but she was beaten to the point where she couldn't even fight back. Now that there was one more, she had no chance of winning. If she could, she would raise her hands and surrender right now. Unfortunately, there was no chance of surrendering on the life and death arena. Only life and death could determine victory and defeat. Xiao He and Xiao Bai flashed and attacked Chewing Fei again. When Chewing Fei saw Xiao He and Xiao Bai, she quickly retreated. At this moment, Xiao He and Xiao Bai rolled their eyes at each other. They had fought together for such a long time that they already had a certain level of tacit understanding. Therefore, when he saw the look in Xiao He and Xiao Bai's eyes, Baisher understood what was going on. When Xiao He and Xiao Bai forced Chewing Fei into a corner, Baisher immediately pounced. He could not be bothered to waste his breath on Chewing Fei. Just as he said before, as long as he rushed up and took a bite, he would be able to end this fellow's life. Chewing Fei only felt an extremely terrifying force attacking her. Baisher's figure quickly enlarged in her eyes. At this moment, Chewing Fei only felt her mind go blank. However, she quickly reacted. Chapter 1934. After all, staying alive was the most important thing. I admit defeat, Chewing Fei shouted. When she was facing death, she realized that nothing was more important than her own life. Looking at White Lion's cold fangs, she felt her body turn cold. An indescribable fear spread in her heart. She wanted to get rid of this fear crazily, and she kept shouting the words, "Admit defeat." However, White Lion would not give her any chance to regret. Just as Chewing Fei shouted and wanted Bailey Hongzhuang to give her a chance, White Lion's fangs had already bitten her neck. I admit, Chewing Fei's voice stopped abruptly. Then, everyone heard White Lion chewing. The smell of blood gradually spread throughout the entire life and death ring and entered everyone's nostrils. Gulp! The sound of saliva being swallowed could be heard. Then, the surrounding cultivators could not help but swallow their saliva. It seemed that this was the only way to calm the shock and surprise in their hearts. Xiao He and Xiao Bai gave White Lion a thumbs up. Domineering, Baisher was a man of his word. He would use whatever method he said he would use to end Chewing Fei. Moreover, it was so fast that even they were surprised. White Lion raised its head and looked at Xiao He and Xiao Bai proudly. Just by watching Xiao He and Xiao Bai fight, it already could not hold back. Now that Chewing Fei wanted to kill them with martial skills, it naturally had to race against time. Therefore, it gave everyone an indescribable shock as soon as it appeared. Oh my god, this contract beast appearance is too shocking. So it didn't attack before to give the other two contract beasts a chance to show off. Once it attacked, Chewing Fei would have been finished. What kind of contract beast is Bailey Hongzhuang? Its combat power is too terrifying. Who would dare to be her enemy in the future? Everyone could not help but shrink their heads. Not to mention Bailey Hongzhuang's strength. Just her 3 contracted beasts were not something that ordinary cultivators could afford to offend. For a moment, everyone was extremely envious of Bailey Hongzhuang. This was truly a blessing that she had accumulated over several lifetimes. If they could have such contracted beasts, their combat strength would be incomparable. Ordinary cultivators would not dare to offend them at all. Even if there were a few more cultivators, they would not be afraid at all. The core disciples all fell into silence. Facing such a scene, they really didn't know what to say. This Bailey Hongzhuang was indeed a person with a strong background. Whether it was her or her contracted beast, their battle prowess was astonishing. The cultivators who originally thought that they should not offend Bailey Hongzhuang were now even more determined to not offend her. Not to mention Bailey Hongzhuang's extraordinary background. They simply did not have the qualifications to resist. Just based on Bailey Hongzhuang's current strength, she was already someone that they could not afford to offend. The 3 beasts slowly walked down from the life and death ring. Xiao He and Xiao Bai also jumped onto Bailey Hongzhuang's shoulders. Baisher leaned against Bailey Hongzhuang's leg and rubbed against it, looking obedient and cute. Everyone looked at the 3 contract beasts who were acting cute. They no longer had the valiant appearance from before. They were clearly three extremely cute contract beasts. Chapter 1935. Master, how was my performance? Baishur looked at Bailey Hongzhuang proudly, looking as if it was asking for a reward. It did not give Chu Yingfei a chance to regret at all. It did not even let Chu Yingfei say what she should say and directly ended Chu Yingfei's life. After being by its master's side for so long, it had a certain understanding of its master's personality. Since its master asked them to enter the life and death ring, it meant that she did not want to give Chu Yingfei a chance to live. Instead of letting Chu Yingfei beg for mercy and putting its master in a dilemma, it would rather go up and bite Chu Yingfei to death. This way, it would save him a lot of trouble. Bailey Hongzhuang looked at Baishur, who kept rubbing against her. The smile in her eyes gradually deepened, but her expression became gentler. Well done. Bailey Hongzhuang gave Baishur a thumbs up and patted its head with one hand. Baishur's actions were becoming more and more in line with her wishes. Hearing Bailey Hongzhuang's praise, Baishur's face became even more proud. It knew that its judgment was not wrong. Xiao He and Xiao Bai saw Bailey Hongzhuang praise Baishur and could not help but come over. Two pairs of big eyes stared fixedly at Bailey Hongzhuang, full of anticipation. Master, how was our performance? If Baishur did not praise them, they would feel a little unbalanced. Seeing this, Bailey Hongzhuang chuckled and said, "You're all great." She was very satisfied with the three beasts' performance today. They completely displayed their true strength. Not only did they perform well, but they also performed well in the battle of wits. Hearing Bailey Hongzhuang's words, a smile appeared on the three beasts' faces. They did not care about other people's opinions at all. The only thing they cared about was their master's opinion. In fact, the focus of their lives was only their master. They worked hard so that they could be recognized by their master. When their master needed help in the future, they would be able to help their master. Jia Xueqiao looked at Chu Yingfei's corpse on the life and death ring. Her eyes were filled with shock. It was only a short period of time. She didn't expect that Chu Yingfei would actually die on the life and death platform. As Chu Yingfei's friend for so long, she also felt sad for Chu Yingfei. However, she couldn't show it at this moment. This was because Bailey Hongzhuang was simply too powerful. She simply did not have the right to be her enemy. It was precisely because Chu Yingfei offended Bailey Hongzhuang that she ended up like this. She absolutely could not follow in Chu Yingfei's footsteps. All of a sudden, everyone had a new impression of Bailey Hongzhuang. Bailey Hongzhuang looked at everyone's silent gazes, and a smile slowly appeared on her face. Since this life and death battle is over, let's return to Wind Canyon. After all, this matter was caused by her. Now that everyone had stopped here and was not cultivating, it would not be good if they did not return. With Bailey Hongzhuang's words, everyone came back to their senses. Previously, they were completely shocked and almost forgot what they were supposed to do. Now that Bailey Hongzhuang reminded them, they finally reacted. Now that the matter was over, they should indeed return to Wind Canyon. Immediately, the group of core disciples walked in the direction of Wind Canyon. Chapter 1936. Although Chu Yingfei was someone they often saw, they sighed in their hearts when they saw her corpse. However, they only sighed in their hearts and didn't have any other feelings. After Bailey Hongzhuang and the other core disciples left the life and death ring, the ordinary disciples of Tiangang sect were in an uproar. They didn't expect that in such a short time, one of the core disciples was already missing. Moreover, the outcome was so reversed that they didn't know what to say. Jia Xueqiao stood in the same place. Her emotions were extremely complicated. Although she didn't want to be dragged down by Chu Yingfei was her good friend for many years. Now that Chu Yingfei had died on the life and death ring, she couldn't just leave her alone. She watched as Bailey Hongzhuang's figure gradually disappeared from her sight. However, the surrounding cultivators still didn't leave, so she didn't dare to make any moves. After thinking about it, Jia Xueqiao slowly walked to a corner in the distance and paid attention to the situation on the life and death ring. This matter was only a temporary novelty to the other cultivators. She believed that it wouldn't be long before these cultivators left. After everyone left, she could bring Chu Yingfei's corpse to be buried. Bailey Hongzhuang and the three beasties returned to the Wind Canyon. To them, the previous matter didn't affect them at all. They still cultivated and rested. After seeing Bailey Hongzhuang and the three beasties like this, the group of core disciples didn't say anything else. It wasn't until evening that Bailey Hongzhuang and the three beasties returned to the palace. Di Beichen noticed Bailey Hongzhuang's return immediately and immediately greeted her. "Wife, you're back." Di Beichen walked out of the house. His handsome face was filled with a warm smile. Bailey Hongzhuang nodded slightly and smiled. "Yes, you're here alone today. Don't you feel bored?" Hearing Bailey Hongzhuang's words, Di Beichen smiled. "It's just cultivation. Why would I feel bored?" Usually, he spent most of his time on cultivation. He was already used to this kind of life, so he didn't find it boring at all. Bailey Hongzhuang smiled sweetly. Speaking of which, she was indeed too worried. She only felt that Di Beichen had come to a completely unfamiliar environment because of her. She was only worried that Di Beichen might not be able to adapt. However, looking at the suave Di Beichen in front of her, she felt that no matter what kind of environment he was in, Di Beichen would be able to handle it calmly. Di Beichen knew that Bailey Hongzhuang was confused because of her concern, and the tenderness in his eyes deepened. "How was your training in Wind Canyon today?" Di Beichen asked with concern. As he spoke, Di Beichen's gaze couldn't help but look at the three beasties. Earlier on, he had already informed the three beasties that if anyone were to cause trouble for Bailey Hongzhuang today, the three beasties would not let them off. When the three beasties noticed Di Beichen's gaze, they couldn't help but look excited and proud. However, in front of Bailey Hongzhuang, they didn't immediately tell Di Beichen about this. When Di Beichen saw the three beasties' expressions, he already knew what to do. Today, we're going to the life and death ring. Chapter 1937. No matter what it was, she didn't want to hide it from Di Beichen. Hearing this, Di Beichen raised his eyebrows and a hint of concern appeared in his eyes. "You and Chu Yingfei?" Yesterday, when Bailey Hongzhuang was talking, he remembered Chu Yingfei's name clearly. If the red player entered the life and death arena today, there shouldn't be anyone else other than Chu Yingfei. Bailey Hongzhuang shook her head slightly and smiled. "You guessed wrong." Hearing this, Di Beichen frowned and kept thinking about the possibilities in his mind. However, he only heard Bailey Hongzhuang mention Chu Yingfei yesterday. He didn't know anything about the other core disciples of Limitless Palace. Who is it? After thinking for a while, Di Beichen couldn't think of any other cultivator, so he could only ask. Seeing Di Beichen's confused expression, Bailey Hongzhuang couldn't help but laugh. "My opponent is Chu Yingfei, but the one fighting today isn't me." Hearing this, Di Beichen was slightly stunned. His gaze immediately fell on the three beasts beside Bailey Hongzhuang. "You mean they're the ones fighting today?" In just a short moment, Di Beichen already understood Bailey Hongzhuang's meaning. Other than these three beasts, there probably wasn't any other possibility. Bailey Hongzhuang smiled and nodded. She looked at Di Beichen with praise. "That's right, it's them." The three beasts looked at Di Beichen proudly. They had completed the task that Di Beichen gave them. From the looks of it, their performance today should be very outstanding. Di Beichen said with a smile. "Of course, with the three of us fighting, the effect is naturally not something that ordinary contracted beasts can compare to." Xiaohei raised her head proudly. Usually, they never had the chance to perform well. Today, they finally had the chance to perform well. "You don't know this, but those cultivators were completely stunned by us today," White Lion said with a smile. When it thought about the shocked expressions of those cultivators today, it found it very interesting. Who asked these fellows to actually dare to look down on them? Today, they only had to perform a little, and they no longer dare to look down on them. Isn't that so? Let's see who dares to offend Master now. Xiao Bai's face revealed a look of dissatisfaction. Thinking about Chu Yingfei's attitude towards its master, it felt a wave of displeasure. Fortunately, after what they had done, no one would dare to look down on their master anymore. Bailey Hongzhuang looked at the way the three beasts were fighting for her, and she felt powerless for a moment. To her, the words of outsiders did not affect her at all, but the concern of the people she cared about made her feel very touched. When Di Baichun saw how proud the three beasts were, the corners of his lips curled up slightly. His eyes were full of praise. Seeing that you guys performed well today, I prepared quite a lot of delicious food for you guys tonight. Following Di Baichun's words, the three beasts' eyes lit up and shone brightly. Really? The three beasts asked in unison. To these three gluttons, there was nothing more important than food. After today's battle, they felt even more hungry in their stomachs. After all, this was their spoils of war. Chapter 1938. When he saw the three beasts confidently heading to Wine Canyon today, he knew that the three beasts would definitely achieve something today. Therefore, he had already told Hey Moo to prepare more delicious food for them. In this way, they would probably work even harder in the future. After all, it was best to be rewarded and punished. That's great. The three beasts couldn't hide their excitement. First, they were in the limelight, and now there was this celebratory feast. This feeling was too great. During dinner, Bailey Hongzhuang told Di Baichun about the three beasts' performance on the life and death arena today. She was extremely satisfied with the three beasts' performance today, so she had a lot of praise for them. Now, the strength of the three beasties was rising rapidly. Their combat strength was even stronger than their cultivation. This was the result of them never slacking off in their daily lives. The three beasts also raised their heads and puffed out their chests, accepting Bailey Hongzhuang's praise without any modesty. Today, they felt that following their master to cultivate in Wind Canyon was an extremely good experience. In the future, they would always follow their master by her side. In fact, although there were a lot of delicious food, to them, following their master was the happiest thing. Just as Bailey Hongzhuang and the others were enjoying dinner, Yulin Feng and Nangong Wu were also listening to Elder Su's report. Elder Su truthfully reported everything that happened today to Yulin Feng and Nangong Wu. Reporting to Palace Master, Madam, Bailey Hongzhuang let her three contracted beasts kill Chu Yingfei on the life and death arena today. Elder Su cupped his hands and reported. Although he didn't appear in front of everyone today, he was very clear about the development of the situation. Since Chu Yingfei voluntarily challenged Bailey Hongzhuang's contracted beasts on the life and death arena, as an elder, he wouldn't be too involved in this kind of thing. Listening to Elder Su's report, Nangong Wu's eyes revealed a hint of surprise. Bailey Hongzhuang's three contracted beasts are so powerful. She had noticed Bailey Hongzhuang's three contracted beasts before and only thought that they were very cute. She didn't pay much attention to their strength. Elder Su nodded with a look of amazement on his face. Today, when these three contracted beasts made their move, they really surprised everyone. The level of these three contracted beasts is definitely not low. Their future development potential is also very amazing. Elder Su slowly stated his judgment. He felt that these three contracted beasts would have a bright future and would be a great help to Bailey Hongzhuang. Yulin Feng nodded slightly. He had also noticed Bailey Hongzhuang's three contracted beasts. Back in the primordial ruins, he had already noticed the uniqueness of these three contracted beasts. If his guess was correct, the white lion should be a beast king. When he first saw a white lion, he was very suspicious of White Lion's identity. However, based on White Lion's current performance, it was most likely a beast king. For this, he also admired Bailey Hongzhuang very much. A beast king was the king of all beasts. It was almost impossible for a cultivator to contract with a beast king. So far, he had never seen a beast king form a contract with a cultivator. He also didn't know how Bailey Hongzhuang was able to do this. Chapter 1939. However, what made Yulin Feng somewhat puzzled was that he never had any understanding of the other two beasts. He had never seen such a contract beast before. Even when he flipped through the books, he had never seen such an existence. It was really too strange. He didn't know how Bailey Hongzhuang contracted with these two contract beasts. Moreover, the black and white beasts looked very strange. If he hadn't seen them by Bailey Hongzhuang's side, he wouldn't have known what they were. It seems that Hongzhuang also has a lot of trump cards. Nangong Wu said with a smile. She was originally a little worried about Bailey Hongzhuang. After all, Bailey Hongzhuang was now cultivating with the core disciples of Limitless Palace. Her cultivation was the weakest among the core disciples. If someone deliberately wanted to find trouble with Bailey Hongzhuang, it wouldn't be an easy matter to solve. But now, it seemed that all her worries were for nothing. Bailey Hongzhuang solved all of this without any difficulty at all. Her strength was much stronger than they had imagined. Chu Yingfei's body has been disposed of, Yulin Feng asked. The existence of the life and death arena was originally to allow cultivators to resolve the grudges between them. Therefore, such a thing didn't surprise them at all. However, this corpse had to be dealt with as soon as possible. Otherwise, the impact on the cultivators wouldn't be small. Elder Su nodded slightly. Someone has already helped bury Chu Yingfei. If there's anything else, you can report to me again. Yulin Feng said slowly, his expression indifferent and elegant. The reason why he understood the situation from Elder Su was that he wanted to know how Bailey Hongzhuang's performance was in the Wind Canyon. After all, Bailey Hongzhuang was his disciple. He wanted to know Bailey Hongzhuang's mentality and how hard she worked. Fortunately, he was very satisfied with the results. Whether it was Bailey Hongzhuang's hard work in cultivation or her calmness when dealing with things, he admired it very much. After Elder Su left, Nangong Wu couldn't help but look at Yulin Feng with a smile on her face. You have a good eye for choosing disciples this time. The first time she saw Bailey Hongzhuang, Nangong Wu only thought that Bailey Hongzhuang's appearance was very outstanding, but she was afraid that her strength was not that strong. However, now it seemed that Bailey Hongzhuang was a person with both talent and beauty. She was simply impeccable. I might as well get past my wife. Yulin Feng couldn't help but chuckle. He had been with Nangong Wu for so long, so he knew Nangong Wu's character very well. If Nangong Wu was not satisfied, then even if it was his disciple, Nangong Wu would think of a way to make him leave. From the looks of it, everything was going smoothly. Lin Feng, this Wind Canyon's assessment is not simple. If there is no one to guide her, I'm afraid that Bailey Hongzhuang will need a long time to successfully pass this assessment. Nangong Wu frowned. Ever since she knew about Bailey Hongzhuang's background, she felt more sympathy and love for Bailey Hongzhuang. Thinking about it, Bailey Hongzhuang must be impatient to raise her strength and avenge her parents. If possible, she also hoped that she could help Bailey Hongzhuang to raise her strength as soon as possible. However, Yulin Feng's thoughts were clearly different from hers. Yulin Feng intended to let Bailey Hongzhuang figure everything out herself so that she could break through. However, from his point of view, this would waste too much time. Chapter 1940. Wifey, what you're thinking about is the rapid improvement in a short period of time. However, the process of cultivation and understanding is very beneficial to Bailey Hongzhuang. If I tell her everything now, she won't be able to experience the process of pondering. Give her a fish and you feed her for a day. Everything can't be rushed. Only after she grasps the method of thinking can she safely face other problems in the future. Yulin Feng was as calm as the wind. In the past, he was also very anxious to complete all of this. However, in the end, he realized that rushing to complete everything might cause him to lose more things. Therefore, he didn't panic and took things one step at a time. This was the right way to go. Nangong Wu looked at Yulin Feng, who was talking. He always exuded a charm that could enchant people. He was wise and steady, making people have no choice but to believe in him. After thinking for a moment, Nangong Wu nodded and said, I believe in your judgment. She knew that she had always been an impatient person. No matter what happened, she always wanted to solve it as quickly as possible. However, at this time, Yulin Feng would always be by her side to remind her. She believed that Yulin Feng's judgment wouldn't be wrong. Since he arranged it like this, he must feel that it was better for Bailey Hongzhuang. She could only control herself and not be too anxious. Otherwise, it would have a negative effect on Bailey Hongzhuang. After Hongzhuang passes the test of the Wind Canyon, I will have time to study explosives with her. Nangong Wu couldn't hide the excitement on her face. She also had an indescribable preference for explosives. It was a pity that no one had the same hobby as her, so she could only study it on her own. Last time, when only Xiao Bai had a certain interest in Li Hongzhong, he couldn't help but be excited. Many times, interests and hobbies needed to be shared with someone to feel the joy of it. Looking at Nangong Wu's impatient appearance, a doting look appeared in Lin Feng's eyes. He then nodded. No problem. As long as Hong Zhuang is willing, you can do it at any time. That's great. Nangong Wu's face was full of smiles. However, very quickly, a look of worry appeared in her eyes. Is there still no definite news about Hong Zhuang's parents? Nangong Wu's eyes flashed with a light of concern. 3 months had already passed, but they still hadn't received any news. This couldn't help but make them a little anxious. Yulin Feng frowned. We haven't received any news yet. He had already asked Deep Beichun, but until now, Shitian Pavilion still hadn't received any definite information. He wasn't surprised by this. Yu Xiqing was not a simple person. She must have hidden this matter very deeply and would not be easily discovered by others. She was able to hide for so many years without being discovered by others. Just from this point alone, one could see that she had hidden her methods. Even if the Heaven Slaughter Pavilion were to take action, they would not be able to find out the real result in a short period of time. Given the current situation, they could only continue to wait. The relationship between the young sect master and Bailey Hongzhuang was also very good. She believed that the Heaven Slaughter Pavilion would do their best to investigate this matter, so they didn't need to worry too much. Chapter 1941. It's been so long, and we still haven't gotten any news. Could there be a problem? Nangong Wu asked with a frown. There shouldn't be any problem. If there really was a problem, then they would have died long ago. They wouldn't have waited until now. Hearing this, Nangong Wu nodded slightly. Yu Linfeng's words were indeed very reasonable. However, under such circumstances, she felt even more sorry for Bailey Hongzhuang. From the time Bailey Hongzhuang came to Limitless Palace until now, she had never revealed the slightest bit of sadness. It was as if nothing had happened. However, she knew very well that all of this was hidden in the depths of Bailey Hongzhuang's heart. Treat Bailey Hongzhuang well. All these years, it hasn't been easy for her. Yulin Feng sighed faintly. At that time, he was already considered very unfortunate. However, he did not expect Bailey Hongzhuang's life to be even more miserable than his. As Bailey Hongzhuang's elder, he also decided to take good care of Bailey Hongzhuang. Therefore, if he could help Bailey Hongzhuang, he would not hesitate at all. Hearing Yu Linfeng's words, Nangong Wu looked deeply at Yu Linfeng. She had a certain understanding of Yu Linfeng's feelings. If not for this, Yu Linfeng would not let Bailey Hongzhuang go to the stairway to heaven to cultivate. This was Yu Linfeng's big secret. Just this point alone, Yu Linfeng had already taken a huge risk. However, her thoughts were the same as Yu Linfeng's. Bailey Hongzhuang was worth the risk. I will treat her well, Nangong Wu said. At night, Bailey Hongzhuang and Deep Beichun went to the stairway to heaven to cultivate again. Cultivating here was of great help to them. Cultivating here for one day was equivalent to cultivating outside for many days. The three beasts also felt that they had made great progress while cultivating here, especially after cultivating with Bailey Hongzhuang for an entire day in Wind Canyon. They felt that cultivating on the stairway to heaven was even more effective. In the following days, Bailey Hongzhuang cultivated in the Wind Canyon during the day and went to the heaven stairway to cultivate at night. In this process, Bailey Hongzhuang's progress was extremely fast. She continued to analyze how she could stay in Wind Canyon for a longer period of time and put it into practice. When the core disciples of Limitless Palace saw Bailey Hongzhuang's improvement, their hearts were filled with shock. He still remembered that when they first started cultivating in the Wind Canyon, they could only last for an hour in the first month. However, Bailey Hongzhuang only used a few days to stay inside for 2 hours. This cultivation speed and understanding ability simply made them gasp in amazement. If it wasn't for the fact that none of them told Bailey Hongzhuang the secret of cultivating here, they would only think that Bailey Hongzhuang had such great progress after she understood the method. What made everyone speechless was that not only Bailey Hongzhuang's rapid progress, Even the three contracted beasts were staying in the Wind Canyon for a longer period of time. This was too hard for them to accept. They were cultivators, but they couldn't compare to the three beasts. This was too much of a blow. Although everyone was speechless, they didn't show it on the surface. On this day, when everyone saw that Bailey Hongzhuang's strength had broken through to the third level of the Green Realm, they were completely speechless. Chapter 1942. She has been cultivating here for less than a month. During the day, she has been cultivating in the Wind Canyon. Only at night would she be able to improve her cultivation. But until now, I have not improved at all. Bailey Hongzhuang has already improved by 2 levels. What kind of abnormal cultivation speed is this? No wonder Bailey Hongzhuang was able to become one of our core disciples. Just this potential alone is not something that ordinary people can compare to. The core disciples were helpless. Originally, they were able to become core disciples of Limitless Palace because they thought that they were geniuses. But after meeting Bailey Hongzhuang, their self-confidence had taken a huge hit. What was a genius? After the survival of the fittest, only the geniuses who were compared were the real geniuses. Originally, they were in the core disciple team, and everyone was working hard to improve their cultivation. They did not feel that they were much weaker than the others. Until Bailey Hongzhuang appeared, they realized that this was a big problem. Compared to Bailey Hongzhuang, they were not geniuses at all. At most, they were a group of mediocre people. After Pei Yifan got along with Bailey Hongzhuang, his admiration for Bailey Hongzhuang also deepened. Just Bailey Hongzhuang's hard work was enough to make people blush with shame. In fact, as a core disciple, every one of them was extremely hardworking. It was just that Bailey Hongzhuang's hard work and focus was stronger than them. In many disciples' opinion, the reason why Bailey Hongzhuang could have such a fast breakthrough speed was related to the elixirs that she had. After all, after everyone cultivated in the Wind Canyon, they relied on using their cultivation technique to recover their spirit energy. Only Bailey Hongzhuang used elixirs to recover as fast as possible. Therefore, Bailey Hongzhuang cultivated in the Wind Canyon for the shortest time. However, she spent the most time in the hurricane. Bailey Hongzhuang enjoyed this kind of cultivation process. Every day, she could feel her own improvement. Every day, the time she spent in the Wind Canyon became longer. She believed that as long as she continued to improve like this, it wouldn't be long before she would be able to pass the test of the Wind Canyon. Most importantly, she didn't care if she could last 4 hours in the Wind Canyon. She was more concerned about her control over her elemental energy. She believed that when she used the same martial skill in battle in the future, she would be able to save even more origin energy. This might not seem like a big deal, but in a real fight, especially when the difference in strength between the two was not too big, this point was extremely important. It was very likely that it could help one win or save one's life at a critical moment. Time passed slowly. On this day, Bailey Hongzhuang realized that she didn't have many pills left. When she was cultivating in the Wind Canyon, the consumption of this pill was extremely shocking. Even though she originally had quite a number of medicinal pills, under such consumption, she was still clumsy. Although Di Beichen had brought a lot of elixirs with him, he didn't bring many elixirs that could restore elemental energy. This was because as long as it wasn't for training outside, the demand for these elixirs wouldn't be high. Why don't I go to Limitless Palace's pill refining hall to buy some herbs? Bailey Hongzhuang looked at Di Beichen inquiringly. They were now in Limitless Palace and not Tiangang's sect. Naturally, she couldn't ask for any elixirs. Chapter 1943. Even though Bailey Hongzhuang had already stayed in Limitless Palace for a period of time, she had always been shuttling back and forth between Wind Canyon and her bedroom. As for the other places in Limitless Palace, she did not know much about them. However, she believed that the structure of each sect would not be too different. Limitless Palace was such a big sect, there would definitely be a pill refining hall. Hearing Bailey Hongzhuang's words, Di Beichen thought for a moment and then nodded his head. That's fine too, but I'm afraid it will waste your time. A trace of worry emerged between Di Beichen's brows. If it was any other place, he could use money to buy pills. However, in Limitless Palace, it was obviously not feasible. Bailey Hongzhuang smiled. It's all right, it won't waste my time. Since my cultivation has increased, my mental strength should have increased as well. Recently, she had been busy increasing her cultivation and had slacked off a lot on her pill refining skills. Now that she had this opportunity, she felt that it was extremely good. After all, she had been cultivating intensely all day long. If she could relax a little, she might be able to achieve better results. Di Baichen looked at Bailey Hongzhuang's glowing appearance, and his gaze became even gentler. In fact, from the beginning until now, he only knew that Hongzhuang was good at pill refining skills. However, he had never seen Hongzhuang refine pills with his own eyes. Thinking about it, when Hongzhuang was concentrating on pill refining, she also had her own charm. Since you've already made your decision, then it's decided. Di Baichen's lips curled into an elegant and charming smile. He also felt that Hongzhuang could relax a little under such high-intensity cultivation. Changing the method of cultivation was also a good choice. Thinking back, when his master had led him to cultivate, he had also used the same method. Bailey Hongzhuang nodded her head slightly. Then I won't go to Wine Canyon to cultivate today. I'll go to Pill Refining Hall to buy some herbs. I'll go with you, Di Baichen said immediately. Bailey Hongzhuang raised her eyes slightly and looked at Di Baichen with a sweet smile. The corners of her lips gradually rose. Sure, over the past few days, she had been training in Wind Canyon with the three beasts during the day. Only Di Baichen stayed in the palace. Since she wasn't going to cultivate in the Wind Canyon today, she was naturally willing to go with Di Baichen. After making the decision, Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Baichen immediately set off. They did not know where Limitless Palace's Alchemy Hall was located. However, they believed that as long as they asked around, they would know the answer. When the three beasts saw that Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Baichen were about to set off for Pill Refining Hall, they who loved a lively atmosphere naturally would not miss out on it. Xiao He and Xiao Bai immediately leaped onto Bailey Hongzhuang's shoulders while Bailey Hongzhuang followed behind her. Seeing how self-aware the three beasts were, Bailey Hongzhuang already knew what they were planning to do. Immediately after, the two of them and the three beasts walked towards the direction of Pill Refining Hall. There weren't any cultivators around the palace. Hence, Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Baichen could only walk all the way out before they saw anyone else. When Di Baichen saw two figures approaching from the front, he and Bailey Hongzhuang looked at each other and walked towards them. Ladies, may I know where Pill Refining Hall is? The two ladies who were walking were suddenly stopped by someone and could not help but frown. Chapter 1944. They never thought that there would be such a handsome man in the Limitless Palace. Their initial displeasure from the sudden interruption instantly dissipated into nothingness. A man like this was simply their dream. When Di Baichen saw that the two women were only staring at him in a daze without any reaction, his handsome brows furrowed slightly. Ladies, may I ask where the Alchemy Hall is? Di Baichen spoke again and repeated his previous question. When they heard Di Baichen's voice again, the two women finally regained their senses. Their faces were quickly dyed red as they felt embarrassed by their previous actions. Not far away, Bailey Hongzhuang looked at the two women's reactions, and her expression was tinged with interest. Di Baichen's charm was truly unmatched. As long as the women saw Di Baichen, most of them would have this expression on their faces. Back then, in Fengbo country, although Di Baichen's legs were crippled, there were still many women who adored him. Just this point alone was enough to see how great Di Baichen's charm was. She and Di Baichen had been together for such a long time. Every time she saw Di Baichen, she still could not escape from his charm. That impeccable face, those affectionate and enchanting eyes were enough to intoxicate any woman. Perhaps, after spending so much time together, she could feel Di Baichen's unique charm even more. Every time she saw him, she would be intoxicated. Master, Di Baichen's charm is not ordinary. We've only asked for directions, and these two women are already infatuated with him. Xiao He shook her head and clicked her tongue. Evildoer. He's really an evildoer. Master, you have to be more careful in the future. There are many beautiful women in the sect, and there are also many moths who cause trouble. Xiaobai frowned. Looking at the two women's infatuated expressions, it felt a wave of displeasure. Di Beichun is Masters. What are these two girls doing? Master is so charming. Only a man like Di Beichun is worthy of Master. I don't think Master needs to worry about this at all. After all, Master isn't someone these mediocre people can compare to. White Lion raised its head proudly. In its mind, only its master was the most charming woman. Ordinary women could not compare to its master. Upon hearing White Lion's words, Xiao He and Xiao Bai looked at each other. They felt that White Lion was right. Bailey Hongzhuang couldn't help but rub Baisher's head and smile when she saw how the three beasts were fighting for her. Don't worry. With the relationship between Beichun and I, we don't need to care about this at all. The three beasties couldn't help but glance at Bailey Hongzhuang. As expected, Bailey Hongzhuang's eyes didn't show the slightest bit of displeasure or worry. Under the circumstances where their hearts were connected, nothing else would have any effect. The Alchemy Palace is in the direction of the Alchemy Palace. As long as you follow this path, you can only turn right when you reach a fork in the road. When you reach a large hall, you'll reach the Alchemy Palace. The two women blushed, and their hearts thumped as they pointed the way for Di Beichun. Their hearts were filled with excitement. Thank you. Di Beichun joined his fists together and turned to leave.